all welcome. I'll just call out everybody's name, and you can let's see, Mr. Gotti, and you can just kind of raise your hand. And Mr. McCusker.
Here.
Mr. Paff.
Here.
And so and I'm Dave Atkins. We're the planning board members. We also have town planner Abby McCabe, and our recording secretary Jessica Cole, and town council Pat Hearn. So welcome to the planning board meeting. All meetings of the planning board are recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live, depending on the weather, on local cable television, Comcast 12, and Verizon 42. Our meetings are also available on the Westwood Media Center YouTube channel and are live streamed. If you're having any trouble logging into Zoom, please go to zoom.us and click on Join Meeting and enter the meeting ID, which is 847-5350-5659. 847-5350-5659. While people are unmuted, please turn off your cell phone ringers to eliminate background noise. We begin the meeting with the board members and the professional staff unmuted and on video. And as the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to further minimize the background noise. So I'd like to outline our process. Our planning board meetings, we typically have 3 types of agenda items. One are we consider applications that have been submitted to the board, and we conduct public hearings where there's a public comment portion. We have other applications that aren't a formal public hearing, and the public will have an opportunity to comment at the board's discretion. And third, we have administrative items where board members discuss issues and deal with items like approval of meeting minutes, planning future agendas, and hearing updates from the planning department staff and other boards. Prior to each agenda item, the chair will announce the item and provide a little descriptive context. For applications, the chair invites the applicant to address the board and give a short presentation summarizing what's being requested. Board members already have the application materials they've received prior to the meeting and have reviewed them all. Board members may ask questions during and following that presentation. Professional staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. And if the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to a public comment portion of the hearing. And I will restate the instructions for how to participate in that. In this remote meeting format, there are a few things. Residents and guests can participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized if they want to speak over the Zoom meeting application. Or from a telephone dial-up, you can press *9 to be recognized. We'll be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to meetings. When we come to these parts of the meeting, I'll remind people of the process and that raising your hand or pressing *9 if you're on the phone. Following public comment portions, the board will deliberate and make a decision or could continue the hearing to a future date. All of our remote meetings require that votes be by roll call. When a motion and a second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion and then proceed to a roll call vote. And then I'll restate the results of the vote. And tonight we have a very busy agenda. I will try to move things along, but please, if anyone wants to slow it down, let me know. But I'm gonna call on people and see if we can be respectful of everyone's time, because we have a number of items on the agenda tonight, and I think it's going to take a while to get through all of them. So with that, Abby, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
All right, then the first item on the agenda is a continuation of our limited environmental impact and design review for 18 to 20 Southwest Park. And this is an exempt use. It's a childcare, a preschool childcare center. We discussed our last meeting. So we're following up tonight. We had requested some clarifications. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant if they're here, and they can present their updates.
Hey, thank you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So I'll just kind of make an opening statement. Jason will kind of share details around the plan, just to kind of address some of the questions that were brought up last. So first of all, thank you for your time and for the opportunity to present to you guys tonight. As we discussed last month, our desire is to open up a preschool at our current location, utilizing our space. As points of clarity from last discussion, we kind of locked in a schedule, barring, hiring a director and there being flex, but essentially operating from 9 to 4 with an early pickup and a late pickup option, which is typical with preschoolers, daycare facilities, of an 8 to 9 option in the morning and then a 4 to 5:30. Our thought was both being able to serve parents, but also addresses some of the concerns we heard initially of a surge of cars, which numerically is about 36 cars is what we anticipate we would have at representing all of the kids who would be present inside of the preschool. We would anticipate the surge of that. If 20%, there's 8 cars do early pickup and drop off, we're talking 2 points of entrance, one for entrance point A that Jason has on the map marked, entrance point B, and that's for the 3-year-old class is A, 4-year-old class is B. So those 2 points would be where the additional 15 to 18 kids would come in during that kind of surge moment. We would utilize our existing parking, which is well below the current rate of what we're using right now. The area is marked for about 50 spots. So we're talking about 36 spots, and at the max around 30, 32 when we have a surge moment. So we looked at we addressed the traffic flow in our map to show clearly how cars will come in and park, utilize the 2 different entrances that are both ADA compliant. So we're being really sensitive. We want to make sure every family, regardless of what their needs are, has an easy egress in and out of the building. And then once they leave the building, they'll be able to drive around with the one-way, which was part of the original traffic pattern of the building itself because of even the way the parking spots are slotted at an angle. And that by dispersing it with those early drop-off, late pickup, we don't see with the existing parking conditions that we have any major issues. Our kids will not be in the playground at night, even in the wintertime when it's, when it's really cold. That's not going to be the time we're going to have the kids out there. We would engage with them in the classrooms. So we're excited. We think that we've had conversations with our neighbors and we've just said, hey, we want to be a good neighbor. Let's have conversation and dialogue. And we're going to be diligent and vigilant on our part with making sure our people are educated with traffic patterns. And ultimately, the office park as a whole has over 400 parking spots. So what we're talking about is just a small fraction. It's no need for an additional traffic study because these were already parking spots that if it wasn't us using this space and it was another office tenant, they would be utilizing all of these parking spots 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so we're just talking about those same surges that would be reasonable for any office throughout the day. So that's kind of just wanted to update you on the last conversation because that was some of the primary topics. And Jason submitted the update and paperwork form for you guys. So if you have any questions as he's working through, let us know. But thank you for letting us be here.
Great, thank you, Mr. Causey. Abby, do we have any additional staff comments or?
We did receive this afternoon some updated material in your packet. I can show it in the screen if you want.
Yeah, I think the big concerns I remember were the bollards, being safety of the playground and the turning radius, for the additional parking spaces and basically the traffic circulation patterns and all. So you want to show those diagrams, we could.
Yes, Jason here, guys. Thank you. Like Chris said, I'm on staff at Encounter Church. I'll just walk through these quickly. The first one.
Let's see. I'm just pulling it up now. Hold on. Let's see. All right. Are you able to see this?
Yeah.
I think you have to share your whole screen because it's.
All right.
We're seeing your desktop, Eb. We're not seeing the actual document.
Okay, all right, so.
Just to make the most use of the
Okay.
time Ivy's working that out, I can just make a few comments of what's in your packet. The very first one has a circle on the top one. That's just an overall view. That one hasn't changed too much.
Sorry, can you see this one? I'm sorry,
Yep.
I may not be in order. This is labeled as 2A.
That's okay. I can use this one. Yep.
Okay.
So as you see the traffic flow entrance that's going around the building, as Chris mentioned, entrance A and entrance B, we have designed because is if you look to the bottom left of the building, those are the two primary preschool rooms, preschool B and preschool A in the rooms. And so that's why we will utilize two different entrances into the building. As Chris mentioned, we have the number of spaces over what we need around the building. 39 spaces along the back with the ones that we have access to on the side, 50 spaces. And so the traffic goes all the way around. The dimensions of what you're seeing with the bollards have changed because of a few different things. One concern being the pass-through, as you recall, is going through not only around the playground, but between the playground and some parking spaces. And so there's 24 feet, which is why we pulled back a section. It's not a clean rectangle. We pulled back a section to allow 24 feet as suggested and required in the town of Westwood. And so there'll be 24 feet between any parking space and the playground. Finally, the last thing I'll mention on here at the top right, you requested a detail bollard. And so Haynes Construction Group, which constructed the interior of Encounter Church, put in the details for the bollards. So that's the construction from what's in front of Wegmans to what's in front of every Dunkin', right? That's the same construction. And those will be 4 feet apart through around the entire surface. The next document will give you a good feel. I'll pull it up on mine so I can go ahead and explain it. It will give you just a little bit more of a detailed feel of the dimension. The primary concern that the president of Telemont Insurance had was the pass-through as people are coming around to the playground, making sure there's plenty of space between. There's 24 feet, and that's what's suggested. And even around certain sections of Southwest Park, I'm assuming it's grandfathered in, but on that one side, you'll see 23.5. Well, we just went ahead and made it the 24 even. There are not spaces, if you go to the top middle, there are not parking spaces on that, in that section where the cursor is. There's no parking right there. So where the parking begins, there's 24 feet from there to the other side, which is where that 42-foot section is of the playground. 24 feet of passway all the way around. So yeah, that's pretty simple. That's what was requested. The only other document that's in your packet is just an overall plot plan. We, of course, because it's a limited review, we did not have to redo the plot plan. So I just drew on that surface where the playground would be for your reference sake. But the two documents that you saw, I believe, are the details needed that addressed all the concern with traffic flow and safety pass-through and the bollards as well. Okay. Yeah, that's just showing the entrance, the exit, all the parking spaces, and where the playground will be.
All right, thank you. Let me ask, who wants to go first? How about Mr. Paff? Do you have any questions? I think you're muted, Chris. Sorry. Chris, you're still muted. There you go.
No, I'm not. Because I've seen misunderstandings. Just wanted to clarify. You're talking about putting the bollards outside the fence, right?
You know what? I'm not positive. I've been assuming so, right? But because the bollard construction was not shown with the fence, They outsource the fence. I'm assuming so, but I can make sure to clarify. I've never seen them inside, right? So
Nor have I, and it obviously, I
Yeah.
mean, it may protect children, it probably would, but you still would have a fence coming down, whereas if it's
Yeah.
on the outside, it may stop the car from actually hitting the fence.
Yeah.
So, so that was just a thought. I'm looking at a Google map image and it of the building, and it shows that there are parking spots painted. And I don't know, it looks like to the, about two parking spots width from the corner of the building. I don't know if, Abby, can you pull up that other
Yes.
document that you just showed? And I just, I have a concern if, what would be the distance? I know you have it, it's notched out like 12 feet or so. Yeah, can you zoom in on that? Or, yeah, that's not that helpful. This one's a little bit better. The Google map image that I'm seeing indicates that those line of parking spots goes up a little closer to the corner of your building than this map indicates. It could be skewed, I don't know, but what is that distance? If people start parking there, what would that distance be?
I'm not positive exactly. Can you help maybe with Abby's help? Show me exactly where you're referring to.
Right there, wherever the cursor is. Yeah, it just the image I'm looking at, the Google map image, it appears as though you have two spots in your loading bay area, and then those center spots start. And maybe if people have access to Google Maps, they could search the same image I'm looking at. I'm just concerned that there's a practice in place of sometimes people are just going to assume whether there's paint there or not, they're going to just start parking there. Yeah, right there. So I'm just curious what that dimension is from that corner to that first. What's that inset? 12 feet?
And 13 and a half.
13, well, it says 32 feet at the top and 26 at the bottom. So you're going in, yeah, 11 and a half, looks like 11 and a half feet. So of the 24, so you're down to 13. Sorry, I apologize. You were telling me the distance, 13 and a half. So I'm concerned about, I understand in theory, when you write it down on paper, it's one thing, but in practice, you may be looking at 13 feet from a bumper to that fence. And that's a potential problem with, I don't know, emergency vehicles. I just have a concern about just using the things as they are and as they're printed versus how they're actually used in real life. And I know you can't necessarily anticipate everyone's actions, but it's just a thought I have, a concern. And the other thing that if you touched on, I apologize if I missed it, but you're not going to adjust any of the lighting for the playground area from what is currently on the side of the building now?
We certainly, we heard that comment last time with the limited. We decided not to do that in the last 30 days. We wanted to focus on this plan. But we don't plan on utilizing it after dark, but we are going to, because there is lighting already outside. So we are going to look at it to make sure there's good lighting for safety's sake for sure before we open up. Tentative date is looking in September. Yes. So we certainly are going to look at it.
Okay, and the last thing that jumped to my mind in your presentation was in the drop-off area, and Abby, if you can switch over to that document, we heard from your neighbor on that side in the drop-off area of his concern of the coinciding times of when his trucks are coming in there and when your drop-off anticipation is. I can't remember the gentleman's name who presented last time or
Rich.
yeah. But anyway, and I'm not posturing this as a condition or anything like that, but if this is going to work smoothly, I think that seems like a really important aspect to work with your neighbor so that this all works and that we don't have issues on either side for you and your drop off or for he and his trucks. So I just wanted to revisit his discussion from 2 weeks ago. And it just, looking at that picture on Google Maps, it's even smaller area than what you have on this side where the playground is, in terms of a lot of vehicles entering in the morning. So it's just an ongoing concern I have, and I don't think there's anything we can do about it, except to implore you to continue to, be the good neighbor that you have been, and just understand this is going to be a change for your neighbor that he has to deal with.
Yeah, it's good, Chris. Thank you. And Chris Causey, the other pastor at Encounter, he talked to Rich about that concern and just reminded him that we will be utilizing the spaces that are allotted to us. As he's utilizing the spaces that are allotted to him, we're not going to be stopping, getting out parents, walking around in the road, So we will. Chris had a good conversation with Rich today, and Rich was very kind as always, very reasonable. We do want to be a good neighbor, just like you said. And so we assured him we don't even need the spaces that are allotted around the building. And so we're within those limitations. The only other comment I would make on the distance, I measured it today, just to verify it once again, that first space starts 20 feet below. And so that is accurate. But a car that pulls through in that top middle space can easily turn out because there's 24 feet in order to do so. And so I did verify those measurements, just wanted to let you know that. But you're right, we want to do everything we can to be a good neighbor and continue to communicate with Rich at Suburban and also with Telemont Insurance on the other side.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Mr. Gotti, do you have any questions?
Nothing additional to what Chris covered a good deal of them. And I tend to agree, looking at the aerial, that the parking spaces, whether I can't tell whether they're painted or not, but the one that I'm looking at certainly shows a couple of cars up in that other area. So it may be a little bit tight coming around that corner, but it sounds like you are cognizant of that and going to work with your neighbors to try and resolve that.
Mr. McCusker, you have any questions?
No real questions. Just your drop off and your pickup. Therein lies your liability. That's going to make this a successful program, or it's going to cause you heartache. So I suggest you keep a good eye on it and don't be afraid to pivot. I look at that same picture that Chris brought up, and I don't see any painted lines, but I think it's in your best interest to make sure that everybody's parking in a legal parking spot, as it was, just to keep that flow moving and safe. And other than that, all my questions have been answered. I thank you.
All right, thanks. Abby, could you let's see, we should open this up to a public hearing now. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this? If, again, to do that, you can click the raise hand button if you're on Zoom, or if you're on the phone, you can press *9. I'll just see, give everybody a minute here, see if anyone wants to comment. All right, I don't see anyone wanting to speak. So Abby, you had prepared some conditions, I think. If you want to walk us through what steps the planning board would take now.
Okay, so in your packet, and I sent these to the applicant as well, my suggested conditions, I had 6 that I suggested, and number 1 is the applicant shall distribute the one-way traffic circulation and drop-off and pickup plan to all the parents and guardians participating in the program, and shall monitor drop-off and pickup traffic to ensure compliance. The one-way traffic flow shall be clearly marked with signage or pavement markings at the entrance and exit to the property. Number 3, the pickup and drop-off areas shall be marked with cones, signage, stanchions, or some kind of barrier or something to indicate exactly where that is to make clear to drivers. Number 4, the bollards surrounding the outside of the playground area shall be spaced no further than every 4 feet apart. Number 5, all portions of the playground area shall be sufficiently lit if in use after dusk. And number 6, a minimum of the 24-foot wide travel lane should be maintained at all times between the playground and the existing parking spaces. And then I know you mentioned, as you can see, as Chris mentioned on that aerial view, it looks like it's not striped parking spaces, but some cars are parking there. So you could consider, marking that up, crossing that out as a no parking zone, or putting something there to indicate that those spots should not be used as parking spaces. So you could consider that as a 7th condition.
Can I ask one quick question? I think because I pulled up the Google Maps. I don't know which spot you guys are talking about because my image doesn't have any cars. So I think I've been looking at the wrong place.
Okay.
No, mine doesn't have any cars either. I just see painted. In fact, there's no cars at all in those center spots in the image I'm looking at.
I can pull it up again if you want. It's the
I'm on Apple Maps, and so that's where I'm seeing it. So I can.
I can see.
Yeah, so that picture shows
Yeah,
cars
I'm
parked.
looking at, yeah.
This is from our towns. I mean, this is an older image. I think
You
this
can,
is
you can see the cars. That's
Yeah.
the last car parked. Yeah, right there is the last one in the painted space.
yeah.
But then there's a gap and then another car. So there is a practice of people parking in spots beyond the painted. I think people have just gotten used to the open space, and it's probably closer than to their door. So you might need some education with the gentleman who runs that business to tell his employees only park in painted spaces.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, I actually met with him today. We walked the perimeter. I showed him the traffic flow, made sure he understood the 24-foot distance and how we're building out our space. So yeah, okay, that makes more sense. That helps understand.
Maybe even, as Abby mentioned, maybe like a no parking sign that stands there at the end of that painted area. No parking beyond here, or something, so that cars just won't take that as the easy way out.
Yeah, legally that's
his.
his. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say legally that's his property and his parking. So we can definitely talk with him about it, but we wouldn't have any ability to kind of do that for them.
Yeah,
Chris,
so
I
that's
hear
part
you.
of them being a good neighbor for you, maybe.
Yeah.
It could also help to direct the traffic flow, because I think you would want, as people come around the back there, you want them to turn and go out one. You don't want them to sort of plow through the parking spaces or not know what to do. So I don't know, maybe an arrow or something to kind of encourage them to turn. But all right, are there any other questions here or comments? So there are 3 things that we would need to vote on this. There are requests for waivers. There's the actual EIDR, and then it's a public hearing. So at the conclusion of this, we would close the public hearing. So the first part of that is that the waivers that were requested. Or Abby, do you have a?
Actually, I don't. We can check with Pat. I don't know, Pat, if they technically need waivers because it's a limited EIDR. Pat, is that right? Do they, for the things like the traffic study and the exterior lighting plan, do they need the formal?
They're not recommending those. They're only recommending the conditions. That was just part of the discussion beforehand. So they're not, they don't have to waive something they're not doing, is what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way.
Right. And because this is a limited EIDR, they're technically not required. So I think you don't need to take the formal motion on the standard waivers, but you should make them motion on the limited EIDR and then also vote to close the hearing.
All right.
And you should also include the conditions if you agree with them that Abby enumerated.
All right. Can I ask someone to make that motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the limited EIDR for the Encounter Learning Center at 18 to 20 Southwest Park with the, I believe it was 7 conditions enumerated by Abby, the 6 listed in front of us, and the 7th being what? Could you reiterate?
The 7th would be to indicate the no parking area.
Okay,
So I think for the applicants, it looks like the space is partially on this property, so you could at least indicate in that area the
okay.
no parking sign.
So again, to approve with those conditions listed by Abby earlier in this meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote. And this is to approve the EIDR Environmental Impact Design Review with those 7 conditions. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So that passes, 4 votes in favor. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing for the limited EIDR of Southwest Park and County Church, 18 to 20 Southwest Park.
Second.
So there is a motion from Mr. McCusker and a second from Mr. Paff to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So the public hearing is closed. Thank you. Thank you, Chris and Jason.
Thank you.
Good luck
Thank
with
you, guys.
school.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Gentlemen.
All right, the next item on our agenda is 420 Providence Highway. This is what used to be the Audi dealership there on Route 1. And we have another environmental impact design review public hearing. Applicant is proposing to modify the building to incorporate the Mazda brand. And just if the applicant is here and ready to present, I will invite them to be elevated to a panelist, and they can tell us about the project.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Mackwell. I'm with Kelly Engineering Group. I prepared the EIDR documents on behalf of the applicant, Prime Motor Group. With us here tonight, along with myself, who is the site civil engineer who prepared the site plan and the application, is Mr. Pete Liebisch, the COO of Prime Motor Group. We also have Joe Rose, who is the facilities manager for Prime Motor Group, and who also may be presenting tonight is Mr. James Malarkey with the Curtis Architectural Group. He is the project architect. I have some slides here presented. Abby, I'm going to try to share my screen if that's okay. Host participant disabled that. Is it
Let's see.
So while we're queuing that up, the purpose of this application, as was stated a little bit, is really just to put Mazda in where Porsche and Audi were formerly located.
Sorry, Erica, are we able to promote David, give him the option to share a screen?
Sure, give me 1 second, I'll figure that out.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so we're looking to reoccupy the former Porsche Audi dealership with a Mazda brand. So the project really entails a rebranding of the store and some architectural changes to be consistent with the Mazda brand. You know, big things to note based on some of the other experience within the that the planning board may have had here is we're going from 2 dealerships on one site to 1 dealership on one site. The parking and site circulation remains identical to the way it was before. The plan has been, or the project has been before the planning board for its original approvals back in 2004, 2005, when Claire Motor Group constructed the dealership for both Porsche and Audi. And in 2007, Prime Motor Group took over that operation. In 2011, Abby, are you putting that one up?
Yeah, so I'm able to share my screen. Is that okay? We can work
Yeah,
from.
that works. So if you want to just hit on your PDF browser to show like one page at a time, it'll show the full page. And so what we see here is an aerial a view of the dealership. It's encompassed by the town line from Norwood and Westwood, the green line. It's a 3.5 acre site. Currently on the site is a 700 or about a 40,000 square foot building over 2 stories, 216 parking spots, 1 curb cut on Providence Highway, and another 3 curb cuts on Walper Street. As I had mentioned at the beginning, Prime Motor Group used to occupy this site with the Porsche and Audi dealership until approximately 2015 or so, when they built brand new dealerships right across the street, individual ones, one for Porsche and one for Audi. If you can see my cursor or Abby's cursor, I don't know what you can see. They're right across the street. Directly to the left is the Porsche, and the one next to that is Audi. And the one up from that is Acura, also by Prime. And the one down the page is Mercedes-Benz, which was before the planning board, I think last spring, for a similar EIDR to make building changes. As the planning board knows, any construction on any commercial building requires the filing of an EIDR. So that's all we need from that. This is a photo here of what the building looks like today, or just before today, because there's currently a security construction fence around that one now. That's what the site looks like. Here's a rendering of what the new building wants to look like with the new rebranding. You'll really see that from this and the one above, that the purpose of this is to rebrand it for a Mazda dealership and make it look a little bit more modern and remove some of the features that were formerly for Audi, I believe. So we can move down one more page and just cruise through these. These are really just details of the architectural plans that we submitted with the package. These are the building renovations. If we just zoom out a little bit more, we can maybe see that this is really just kind of documenting what's there, similar to our site plan. And if you go down, yeah, we can just keep cruising through these. This is just the floor plans that were submitted to the record file of what's going to go there. These are the architectural detailings of the changes to the facade of the building, as we showed in the building rendering, and also the existing photograph, and some of the updates that will happen all around the building with, to make it a Mazda brand. So if we keep going, this is our site plan as filed. Really all I've done here is called out. Abby, if you can just scroll so I can show the gentleman or the planning board where we're removing a piece of the building. It's just a top left corner of the building. You'll see it. It's X'd out, portion of the building to be removed. That is a very small portion of the building to make the facade nice and flush. And that's the major renovation to the building. There'll also be a small portion removed at the vestibule. What I have highlighted in yellow is very consistent with the previous planning board approval of 2011, and it shows where display parking will be parked within the parking lot based on the zoning calculations for, you know, the uses within the building, which is office and other. So the additional spaces will be used for the storage of new vehicles that are not registered in the tan areas. The next page, Abby, down is the last time that the site was before the planning board. This came out of the planning board file, I believe, in 2011, where everybody agreed. They made some site modifications at that time to remove some curbing and also to allow stacked parking in the rear of the property. The rear of the property, and this is over where she's got the cursor now. And so that's it with that slide. We'll move on to the next one. And this is just some of the signage details, which I know are not 100% germane to the planning board. So we'll just cruise through these. The previous application had 6 signs because there was 2 dealerships. This is a very similar signage package, except there'll be 5 signs because we have 1 less pylon sign and 1 less sign on the building for tenants. So we are under review at the building department for the signs. We think we'll need 1 special permit for the signs. That special permit was previously granted as well. Now that I've talked about special permits in the Zoning Board of Appeals, we were at the Zoning Board of Appeals, I believe last week or the week before, and we closed the public hearing to obtain special permits for the uses. We amended the existing special permits, maintaining all of the conditions of the former special permits, and we're allowed to merely substitute Mazda for Porsche Audi. The special permits through the Zoning Board of Appeals were specific to a user, and those users were have been modified. So if we just keep coming down, that's just a site plan showing the signs. If we just go down to the next ones, these are where the signs will be on the building, very similar to what we showed you on the rendering that's up at the top of the presentation on the front of the building. And then there's just the service sign on the side of the building. We can keep coming down through these. And these are some of the particulars that the other departments will look at, just Mazda signs and the logos. These are all part of our application. So as I had stated, the purpose of this EIDR hearing is to reuse the existing site. So we did do a survey for the property. If you just want to zoom out a little bit, Abby, on this one, we did do a ground survey, and as I had said, we're not planning to make any changes to the site at all. And when we started getting comments, we realized that we need to better document the site for the drainage improvements that are there. And recalling our hearing over at Mazda, that the town would like to see all sites that come for EIDR, I guess, voluntarily become compliant with this town's stormwater management policy, which I believe is 80% TSS removal for the entire site and or a recharge component of 1 inch. So what I have highlighted here is the site is fairly modern. It's not completely antiquated with respects to drainage, but we do have 3 independent recharge systems. They are here highlighted in blue. And there are also, we believe, 3 water quality devices that treat that water before it either enters the ground or discharges to the public streets that are there. So when our survey crew was there, we couldn't figure out all of the exact details of these systems, and we've been working on that to better document how much recharge is under the ground. We couldn't find any plans showing what was proposed or constructed, but we did find some plans indicating what features were there. We have since gone back to the site with our survey crew to help better document those things. The peer review consultant beta groups recommended that we document the drainage system to be compliant with the town standards, and then also provide a long-term operation and maintenance plan to go along with it. And so with that, I think that we have the team here to answer any questions about the site, the circulation, or any other particulars within the building. I'll just, repeat one more thing. We're not looking to change any curb cuts. The site has formerly been a car dealership and wants to become a car dealership again. I believe the site has been vacant for a few years now, at least for 4 years. And on behalf of the applicant, we look forward to seeing it become a vibrant site again. So with that, I will turn it over to our team to supplement any gaps that I may have left in our initial presentation. And if any of our team wants to supplement any of that, they can now. And through the chair, we would then go back to questions and answers from the planning board and any concerned members of the planning staff, town staff, or the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mackwell. I just had a quick question. So you've documented the the stormwater, the recharge systems, all that, but are you saying that it does meet this town's standards now, or that you don't know?
I haven't been able to, we can't quite see everything that's underground, so I don't know exactly how much recharge is under the ground. I had our survey crew go out and pull all the covers to see if we could take, we have basically a selfie stick that goes on underground sometimes when we take some pictures of manholes, but they couldn't really get in there to see what was installed. We have inspection port covers that are pretty small that we can't get a video down there, but we know they're there in the ground, and some of the other features that are there as well. So what we would like to do is just document what's there, provide a professional statement of what's there and how we're going to continue to maintain it to be in compliance with the town policies. And that's it.
All right, let me see if board members, I'll do a little different order here. Mr. Gotti, do you have anything to ask or any comments?
No, well, David, thank you for the thorough presentation. The one question I have is, will this go back to beta for them to see what's been submitted here tonight, or has that been sent to them? I just don't understand whether or not what we've seen is actually had any comment from them yet.
So
Abby, did you want to jump in with that?
Sure, yeah. Beta, it hasn't been confirmed yet. So Beta had asked for documentation on if the property meets current stormwater standards. So we don't have that yet. Beta has not reviewed that. So my recommendation is ultimately for the applicant, for you to continue this hearing so that the applicant can provide updated plans and information for Beta to review in advance of your next meeting, the drainage and stormwater. So either confirm that it already meets the current standards, or provide further proposed improvements that Beta can review so that it does, so it will meet current standards. Also, I just wanted to add to that the zoning board did recently issued a special permit for the vehicle use for the Mazda dealership, but there still needs to be they still need the special permit on the signage. So that's still forthcoming. That's a separate special permit with the zoning board.
And David, that gives you the time that you said you were going to have your own engineers come in.
Well, we're kind of hitting on multiple things all at the same time. So what was very good about the special permit hearing with the zoning board is the signs are kind of a non-critical path issue for the applicant at this time. What is directly in the critical path is obtaining a building permit, which will allow them to obtain a demolition permit, which will allow them to meet the schedule that they've committed to with Mazda. So as I had stated in relation to the drainage and on behalf of the applicant,
David,
we are more than willing to.
Can I interject something, David?
Sure.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Jim Malarkey, the architect. We actually had a demo permit already for the interior of the building. Demolition is complete. So we're in a holding pattern. We erroneously believed that we're just changing the use from one franchise or from two franchises to one. Everything else is actually reductive. As David stated, we're using the same site. We're using the same building exactly. And in fact, with the reduction from two franchises to one, its need is less than the building already provides. We're not changing any use groups. We're not substantially changing the interior of the building anyway. This is a cosmetic exercise for the front exterior of the building and signage only. Roofs, systems, MEP systems, everything is intended to remain the same. And so we actually thought erroneously that it was a simple matter of a building permit. And we had a contractor ready to go. That demolition is done, and we're in a kind of a stasis. So there's a sense of urgency from the team. That's where we're at. We're open to a conditional approval, by the way. We're not trying to obfuscate anything. But we do need to move forward as soon as we can.
All right, I'm going to ask Mr. McCusker, do you have any comments or questions?
I'm looking for a parking circulation, set up, how we're gonna be moving cars in and out of the dealership, customer parking and the such like that.
Okay, if you can, we can scroll down, Abby, to the, down a few pages. We can go through that. So it'd be paid.
David, if it's easier, you now have the ability to share your screen if that's easier.
Oh, great. We'll do that. Looks like I got too many screens, huh? I only have one, really. Can everybody see my screen now and the blue and the purple pointer?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. So the question came up about site circulation. Again, I'll bring up our site plan here, which shows with my blue cursor, we have one existing curb cut here on Route 1. This is Walper Street here, where we have one-way inbound curb cut, another one-way inbound curb cut. These are two smaller curb cuts. This services the service area here. This is kind of out front in front of some of the display. And then a two-way curb cut, which is in the back. The way that car carriers come in here is they come in from Route 1 northbound, swing right into the site. Generally, we'll park in this area right here where my cursor is to unload any cars, and then they're able to get out onto Walper Street and back to Route 1. This is one of the things back in 2011. I think some interior changes were made that made it a little bit easier for the car carrier to get into the site and to get out of the site. I think there were bigger islands right here and here that stuck out further that maybe prevented them. I think there were some activity where they were unloading on Walper Street. So part of the parking plan of 2011 was to allow that to happen. So that's how they come in. Again, we're not looking to make any curb cut changes at this time, and that's how people come in. All of the parking that is not shaded in tan is for customers, service vehicles, employees. The areas that are shaded in tan were designated for the new cars. And similar to the last time that the site was before the planning board, we had these two areas. They presented it on one sheet. I think it was the curb revisions that they made at the time and the parking plan. So it's a very similar parking plan. We're not requesting any site changes at all. We are, the threshold, I think, for the EIDR is any construction on a commercial building.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Paff, do you have any?
David, can you reiterate the path of where your trucks parking when they're unloading the vehicles?
I think right here in this area here.
And it's right below that. That is the anticipated customer parking.
Some of the customer parking and employee, everything that is not yellow was for new cars. I believe that the designation was where can we park the new cars.
May I interject, please?
Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, I'm sorry. David has a little bit backwards. The curb cut that's on Route 1, right there.
Yep.
The car carriers would come in that curb cut, and we show the arrows facing that curb cut. The arrows should be reversed. They would unload in that little roadway there and then exit on the Walper Street, then to Route 1.
Right up this way, Joe?
Yes.
So they don't even come around the building at all?
Not at all.
Okay, so we got that wrong.
Yep.
So there, no contact with customer parking.
No.
Okay. The sign, proposed pylon sign, it's in red on this. And how tall is that? Was it, to the bottom of the sign, 13 feet?
Let's take a look.
I'm just,
I didn't zoom in. I
Yeah.
rolled pages here.
that's the sign. That's the largest sign you're proposing, right?
Yes.
And that, yeah, that's what I saw.
13 to the
13 and
bottom.
change to the bottom. So that's fine for visibility, looking left, people coming out of Walper. That's what I was concerned with.
Okay, that's
Visibility under the sign to see oncoming traffic. coming
right.
from
It's
the road.
also set back quite a bit.
Right, right.
from-
I see that. It's quite a distance from that.
From the travelway.
Right.
I believe there was a pylon sign here and also one on this side.
Yeah, okay.
Last branding.
So Abby, right now, just so I understand, it sounds like the big block here is the stormwater management. Am I right there,
Yes,
Abby?
yes.
So
Yeah, sorry.
what we have right now is a documented effort on the part of the applicant to describe what is currently there. We don't know when that was installed or to what extent, what it does, essentially. Am I right there in interpreting what I heard?
Somewhat. We just don't know the exact particulars. We do know the intent and we do know for the most part what's there, but we can't tell you if it 100% meets the newer policies for the town and its stormwater management policies. We believe that the current drainage that is at the site was installed in 2004, 2005, when the building was converted from an office building to a automotive dealership.
Okay.
Not 100% positive, but and then I don't know when the office building was constructed. But 1998 was a time when significant changes were made to the Wetlands Protection Act, and cities and towns started requiring implementation of drainage systems. That's what so pre-98, they may not have had to put much drainage in. Post 98, the fact that there's a wetlands across the street and you would have had to file with the planning board and the Conservation Commission, there's some drainage improvements that went in. They were evident in the town's file, and we'll take our piece of not documenting them thoroughly on our first crack at our existing conditions plans. But going through back some of the documents and some of our survey revealed that I just did this quickly to say, hey, we do have some drainage here. Let's figure out exactly what's here, document it better, and start maintaining it properly. As I said, the site's been vacant for 4 or 5 years now. So this is a colored version of our existing conditions plan showing where the drainage goes. So I can briefly explain that here now. What these green things, there should be another green one here, those are proprietary stormwater devices, which are a little bit, glorified catch basins that remove total suspended solids. And then these blue items are recharge systems. And the way that this particular site works is from this point, it actually drains backwards over to this. This all fills up and then has to overflow to get to this area, to get to here. Similarly, these catch basins in here, they actually flow this way until this thing completely fills up, the water backs up in the pipes. Then it flows this way toward the outlet that goes across the street and over here. And so these, that's what we've done, what we've agreed to do, similar to when we did Mercedes of Westwood, is we accepted a condition of approval from the planning board to do just the same. And month or two after we were finished with the hearings, we were able to dig out all the plans, do the calculations, and present a professional report to the DPW director and the peer review consultant, who agreed that the Mercedes dealership did in fact currently comply with the town's modern standards. I think that that dealership, Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, follows a similar time frame of being constructed by Claire in the early 2000s. And then,
Yeah, so is that, yeah, it was done before the Porsche Audi store.
right. So the town of Westwood at that time in the early 2000s was having applicants install what are still considered modern drainage systems. So that's what we know, and that's what we agreed to do, and we give the prime motor group folks an O&M plan that they can follow and find all the features within the site for maintenance.
So it sounds to me that we are being asked to approve on faith that this is going to be taken care of in the future. And it's not been the practice of the planning board, as far as I'm aware, that we would allow that on such a critical issue as stormwater management. I operate under the philosophy that we have a peer review consultant in the form of Beta to act on our behalf. And they are of the opinion at this point that this needs to be documented, this needs to be proven, that this does meet our current standards for stormwater management. And I would be inclined, I'm just one member of the board, but I'm inclined to follow their advice and make sure this is our one time we have to make sure that this building is compliant with how we want to deal with stormwater management. Add to that the sensitive geographic area of this location. I would be inclined. I think everything else looks great and fine. I'm excited to have this building occupied, but I am not to the point of looking past this practice of the planning board of making sure, even though it's a similar use, the same use, it's an older building, and even on your first go around, you couldn't discern just exactly what we have here for stormwater management. So I would be happy to extend you some more time to do some more research and come up with what we have here and work with Beta in explaining to them that what we have is something that complies with how Westwood wants to deal with stormwater management.
Okay, and that is appreciated as well, and use the word volunteer. And I do believe, and somebody will have to correct me if I'm wrong, is the review and documentation of a site that's not proposing any construction on the site is also voluntary, and we're agreeing to work with the town to make sure that everything is okay. I don't think it's a mandate. I think it's a cooperative agreement on both sides.
Right.
Can you comment on that?
Me, an application requirement for an EIDR is providing drainage details and a full, that stormwater information. The applicant did request a waiver for that. So that's up to the planning board if you want to waive that. But the practice of the planning board has been when a site comes to you, you check the drainage to make sure it's either in compliance, and if it's not in compliance, you generally recommend there's improvements made so that it meets the current stormwater standards. In some cases, there has been conditions of approval, but usually in those cases, you have more information to begin with. So usually we'll have more detailed drainage plans that exist, or maybe a draft proposal of what the applicant's proposing to do to make those stormwater improvements. So there can be conditions of approval, but it has to be specific enough that no further decisions need to be made. Because if it's too open-ended of meeting stormwater, current stormwater standards, there's various ways to do that. So it's too open-ended for staff to determine with the applicant how that can be done. So I think we need more information so that Beta can review that in time for your next meeting to make a recommendation. In other cases, sometimes you'll have a draft plan that may capture roof runoff. So then we would have that reviewed by Beta. So in some instances, you've conditioned final review of those plans, but the condition spells out specifically what staff would be reviewing.
Right, and Abby, didn't we, and as they noted, like for the Mercedes dealership, this was resolved in some way. I think we had more information though.
Right, and then after that hearing, the applicant was able to provide information that Beta reviewed, that staff was able to review, determined that that site across the street did meet the stormwater current standards.
Right. And at the time of the hearing, we had to go do some research, and Joe was able to dig up some plans that helped us quantify the items that were on the ground. And just to explain, we've kind of already done that here with Joe couldn't find anything. So we're at the point now where we're going to have to pay somebody to go up the pipes with a camera. And we're willing to do that, but I don't know if we can get that done prior to the 23rd. And now we're delaying keep delaying again. So we're willing to work with the town to do the investigation, to document everything that's there and provide the appropriate maintenance. We feel that from what we know thus far, it's a fairly compliant site, and to make it fully compliant might not take very much other than documentation.
Can I jump in for, I'm sorry, can I jump in for 1 second? So good evening, and thanks everybody for your time. My name is Pete Liebisch. I'm the COO of the Prime Automotive Group. So I guess one of the things I would want to ask, and certainly, you know, we've demonstrated over time that we're very good neighbors and very appreciative of everything everybody's done for us, and we will do everything that's needed by the town in order to make this work for all involved. We do have a little bit of a risk with Mazda, and whether it's that relevant, it's relevant to us as business owners, specific to some contractual obligations with them to get started with construction by a certain time frame. They've been pretty kind to us. As you know, we're moving from down the street in your neighboring town up across the street from our main group of stores, at least in this area. So I'm wondering if there's a purview or some type of request can be made to start some type of risk of, you know, prior to, you know, because we do have some time here. David enumerates that fairly well. For the 23rd, you know, we could be into March. We're already a month and a half late starting with Mazda. We're just looking to get started, and certainly we will comply. So I don't know if that's something we can ask for in this venue or not, but I figured I'd throw it out there as an opportunity for us at least to do right by them, so they can see that we're doing the best we can to get moving and honor our part of the contract with them.
Well, thank you. So what could be different by the 23rd, I guess would be the question that I have, is that like everybody wants to do this, but I think the thing, like as Chris raised, the point was that we've done this for every project. You know, we've always looked at the stormwater, and you know, it's our one shot to bring things up to the requirements now. If it's already there, it's great, but you know, so what can we do in the next?
I could weigh in on that a little bit. We were actually permit ready before Christmas, and we bid the project before Christmas. So we were really ready to go. At this point, all the subcontractors have been awarded for the building, and the contractors in place, demo is done. When you put a project on hold like that, there's a knock-on effect at the sub level going forward. So I know it only seems like a month, but I believe this client is willing to proceed at risk if a building permit is granted. And again, we're not trying to obfuscate any requirement. We're just trying to not take the loss of upsetting the subcontractor market and stopping the flow of the work.
Mr. Gotti.
Abby, I mean, do we have the capability to grant a conditional approval to allow the work on the building and the demolition that needs to be done to the exterior to proceed while they line up the engineers and have the time to get that done? Is there, you know, I'm sensitive to the project timeline and the things that these guys are up against. At the same time, I don't want to shirk our responsibilities. Is there not some way that we can grant a conditional approval to get the information that we need, much like they did with Mercedes, which seemed to meet the requirements?
I mean, usually it would need to be approved by the planning board, go through the planning board, and zoning board process prior to a building permit being issued. The drainage condition at this point would just be so open-ended. If they're able to provide information that it meets current standard, then it's not a problem. But if they come back with something that says it's, it doesn't, then where do we go from there?
I just pulled up the condition. I don't know if you guys can see my screen because it was in a different document, but I just pulled up the condition for the Mercedes dealership. And to be honest, I think we knew similar amount before the planning board hearings over there. The condition of approval for the Mercedes dealership, which was just this past May, the applicant shall submit final design plans to Beta Group and the town planner showing the system to recharge 1 inch of roof runoff or best management practices to provide 80% TSS removal and 50% phosphorus removal from pavement areas as recommended in the memo from Beta Group dated May 5th, 2020. The plan shall be submitted to the staff for review and approval prior to the issuance of the building permit, and the system shall be installed prior to final occupancy. So in that case, we got the beta, and I was a little bit unaware of that stuff. We got the beta review May 5th, and we were able to get to a decision on May 12th. And after that, we were able to, put our ducks in a row, get our research done, and put a report together that was ultimately accepted by Beta Group without having to do any physical work on the parking lots. So we think we're in a similar condition here. I just can't, without a design plan, I just can't say this one holds X amount of runoff and this one holds this much and this one holds this much, because I don't have it. I think we have to hire somebody with a camera to drive up the pipe and look into it so we can get a better handle on exactly what's under the ground. Either that or we're just guessing. And so, but what we do know is there's 3 recharge systems on the site and it's a developed site. That's what
Abby, is that condition adequate to allow the building permit, I guess, is one question. That's my first question.
Well, it says the plans will be submitted prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, like the condition
Right.
is not.
We don't have plans right now.
Right, so last time we did get that, the other property across the street at Mercedes, we did get that before the building permit was issued.
Right.
So I think there must not have been the same time crunch. And then Mr. Mackwell, you said that, the beta report came in May 5th, and then that decision was from May 12th. So it actually was all kind of came together in time for the board to approve it with the condition, and it was already there. So I think it's here we have your research on the existing conditions, but we don't have really any detail as to, we don't know yet. It's like you said, you'd have to go a lot more detail to understand if it's what the performance of the system is.
What do we do if we don't know that? I mean, we know that there's something there, and we know that there's things that can be done. I mean, without digging it up, I would just as soon not dig up the parking lot just to see what's in it. What we would want to do is hire somebody with cameras that can drive up there with the remote control cameras and get us video of what's there. And then we can make a better assessment of what's there and whether it is consistent with the town's policies and if there are any improvements that need to be made. And the only difference, my suggestion, if you were to entertain a condition like that, we would just tie it to the occupancy permit as opposed to the building permit.
Other board members, any
I don't even know if Joe Doyle would agree to that. He may want full compliance with the stormwater before he issues a building permit. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for the building department, but when was this looked at? I think the beta memo indicated it was someone was there looking at this.
We were there last week.
And was there another date of like January 6th or something, or maybe beta went out twice? I'm misrecalling what that was. But I don't like standing in the way needlessly for things, but this is something that we do mandate from all EIDRs is stormwater management. It's a hot button topic. And
Do it on the last one that we just heard.
Pardon?
It was a limited.
There's a limited EIDR for a church, so we had different obligations there.
Amendment applied.
Excuse me?
And the Dover amendment applied to the last applicant.
Well, I don't know what we can do without more information. And I understand what you're saying, that you were permitted for whatever in December and things started and now they're interrupted because of this issue. But as far as I can tell, this has been an issue since the site was first looked at for occupation of Mazda. And I'm sorry it's not easily fixable or easily discernible. But well, I'm not sorry, I'm not the one who did it, but this is not typically something that we would just look the other way in. And I understand what Abby's saying. I hear what you're saying. It was a thought that went through my mind about the COO as a condition, but I don't know how that works with regard to a timeline of things. I don't know how long it'll take for you to get a guy in there with a camera and then issue a report. There's a lot I don't know, so it's difficult for me to say, yes, go ahead and, with our approval. I should say with my approval. I'm not going to speak for the other board.
Well, James, how long will the physical renovations take?
About 6 months.
How long? I'm sorry.
About 6 months.
So once they start the renovations, they will take 6 months, which will give us ample time. I just can't guarantee that I will be in a different position on February 23rd than we are today. That's my problem, which means, which costs my client and, the applicant 2 months.
Yeah, and I think
we're committed with, look at the drainage that went over at Porsche, Acura, Mazda. Talk to, Beta Group in the town if Beta Group and Kelly Engineering were a tremendous working relationship we always have. And Prime Motor Group does what they say they're going to do. And if we don't, we're going to be sitting there with a brand new renovated site in a brand new building that we can't use. So that's, that's the crux of it is the team is committed to making it right to the best of our abilities. And that's where we are.
So Mr. Mackwell, you're saying, either you would determine whether it meets the standard. If it doesn't meet the standard, you would commit to upgrading it to meet the standard.
I think that would be the agreement that's the condition of, we did before. Yes, that would be the condition is we either document that it meets the town's policy or we make an improvement agreeable to your peer review consultant and your engineering department that puts it in compliance.
Mr. Atkins, I can tell you for sure, we would certainly make that commitment without a doubt.
And so the way we could, so since we're not, the condition example from before was the permit, building permit. So that doesn't help you here, but if we made it like the occupancy permit, then that would be a way to have a condition that was in there. But Abby, would that be, how would that work with our building department? So in other words, same condition, but it's the certificate of occupancy is the thing that we would not grant until it was compliant?
Yeah, I think we could do that, but the problem is still kind of open-ended on how they'll meet the current standards. So it's for allowing staff to approve, what exactly are they looking for, to approve. There could be, different suggestions that ways to achieve that. So it's still kind of open-ended on,
So, I mean, that is
engineering.
something that could be different in 2 weeks. I mean, we may not know for certain what the numbers are, but this, we could work out a commitment, a proposal in the next 2 weeks with Beta's input and everything. But I do want to, we are in a public hearing, so I want to two more things here. We need to hear if there's any other concerns from board members, and then we need a public comment portion of this.
Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Ahern.
So let me ask the applicant a question. If the applicant were so inclined, would it be willing to put some money into escrow or a bond or some type of surety so that the town can ensure the work gets done?
Yes, sir. Speaking on behalf of Prime Motor Group, Mr. Aaron, yes, absolutely, we would be willing to do whatever you see adequate.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep, thank you.
That amount would have to be determined by Beta Group.
Right. But that's something that could perhaps be determined by the 23rd. They could probably peg a number for us.
That would, I'm sure Beta could, but it probably depends on to what extent they need to do work on this.
Right. Usually they would provide an estimate when they know what exactly is being proposed. But we, maybe for if you continue it to the next meeting, maybe we could get a better idea and sense by the 23rd of, what work, and we could work further with Beta and Prime on that amount that would be sufficient to meet upgrades, whatever is required.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I ask another question?
Sure.
So, and this is directed to the applicant. For your construction, what in the next 2 to 4 weeks are critical steps that you need to get done? And perhaps we could permit those until such time as we have some kind of conditional approval or we have it actually done. So what would you most like to take away from tonight's meeting to get you to the 23rd?
I think from a construction point of view, it's an all or nothing really, because the next step is to demolish the front facade. And the reason that that's an important next step is we really can't finish the interior of the building and postpone the work on the facade because it would expose finished work. So once the facade is taken off the front, it's a fait accompli. We have to keep going,
Okay, so a demolition permit for the facade would not help you without the ability to replace it right away.
Or at least tarp it. We're not adjusting steel or anything like that. I mean, in theory, we could remove the facade and tarp the outside of it and continue on the inside, but it's not ideal. It's, it would be the wrong thing to do.
How about if is it preferable?
Anything that gets us going is preferable because it gives us more options with the construction schedule and the subcontractors to move,
Mr. Gotti, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like, can we get some movement to at least a commitment on the 23rd that we are either going to have some conditional approval, and that also gives you the time to see if you can get somebody in with the cameras and actually put all of this to rest. But, I'm sensitive to the notion of losing the 2 months that you spoke of, right? So how might we be able to get to the 23rd and either have an acceptable conditional approval with whatever Beta needs to peg for, the bond, or you have time to try and get somebody in with the cameras and just put all this to rest. So, I mean, is that a fair goal to the continuance?
I think so. Pete
All right.
or James? I mean,
Well, I would just add one thing. The reason there was activity in early January is we had Kelly do an existing condition survey because we didn't have adequate documentation. Prime has changed hands, and I believe it was their attorney. Somebody had a fire at their house, and documentation was lost. And then we went to the town to try and get existing condition plans, so we didn't have to do all this, and that scratched out as well. So most of this is just lack of documentation. That's what has delayed us so far. If anybody at the town thinks there's another avenue where there may be something squirreled away in a back room and with these things on it, that would help us a lot.
All right, I think I think we have, I'm not comfortable with throwing together something tonight that solves everything, but I think that what we outlined for the 23rd, it sounds very achievable. Are there any board members, everybody else? I'm fine with the rest of this. I don't have any other questions about this. I would like to open it up.
You're going to seek public input?
Yeah, I want to open it up for public input. If there's anyone, this is a public hearing, if anyone who is attending would like to speak, we'd ask you to click on the raise hand icon on Zoom or to press *9 on the phone. I'm just going to check the attendees here and see if anyone is, we have one person on the phone, so give people time to react. Not seeing any activity there. So assuming there's no public input for tonight, would someone like to make a motion? Do we have enough details for what, well, would someone like to make a motion or suggest the path forward now? How about Mr. Paff? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think actually Rob kind of hit upon and crystallized what we were attempting to do. So Rob, if you could somehow put that into a motion.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to continue the hearing for 420 Providence Highway for the EIDR to our next meeting on February 23rd at 7 p.m. To give time for Beta to get an estimate for what would be put into escrow, to give the applicant time to potentially get some cameras up in and be able to give us a reading on what the stormwater recharge systems are that are on site, and also with the goal of, in absence of that, getting to a conditional approval. Is that sufficient?
I would add the long-term O&M plan too, is what Beta was requesting.
All right.
Is that something that you could have by our 23rd?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And are there any other, there's no other issues? Because I'd like, ideally we could take this to the 23rd and we would have something that everybody was happy with and we could approve. So.
Yeah, for me, it's just the stormwater. That's the only issue.
All right, so
we have a motion. I'll second Rob's motion if it's adequate for the.
Yeah, I mean, technically, there's just a motion to continue.
Right.
But the detail is details. So
we're just letting everyone know what the expectations are for the next 2 weeks and what the hope is on the 23rd meeting.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Gotti and seconded by Mr. Paff. Is there any further discussion? There was no public comment on this. So the motion is to continue this hearing until the 23rd of February, our 23rd of February meeting. Same coordinates, so on Zoom,
7 p.m.
7 p.m. I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So this EIDR hearing is continued to February 23rd at 7 p.m. And thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for the time. Thank you
luck.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. The next item on our agenda is another public hearing. This is for 45 Winter Street. And this is an earth material movement environmental impact design review. This is so we'll just, we can proceed to the applicant. I'm going to make the applicant a presenter. I see Mr. Watson.
They're just coming in now.
And so in this case, we're familiar, our earth material movement permits typically, if more than, oh shoot, I forgot the number. Was it 200 cubic yards? If earth is going to be moved somewhere, then it comes to us for this approval. Typically, the approval is, it's about where the trucks are going to go and the conditions of that, and trying to not disturb the neighborhood and not, So anyway, the applicant, would you like to go ahead and describe what's happening here?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, it's Evan Watson from W Engineering. With me is Jillian Karakari of Coastal Woods Homes. If I could share my screen. Oh, is that going to take a sec? Or?
Yes.
I can do it easily if it's going to take a minute.
Let's see.
You should be
Does
able
that
to
work?
now.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Okay, can everybody see the plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, great. So we, Coastal Woods is in the process of constructing this house. It's on Winter Street, and it's right behind the development from the Green Company. Here's a locus map. You see Winter Street's near the corner of Winter and Clabbertree Street. And back there's the open space residential development that's going on. So here there was a couple Form A lots. The house was proposed to be at elevation 214. And you can see on the design here that left us with a little knob up here, relatively steep slope to the road. And then we had it proposed so that this grade in the back remained. So when it was actually constructed, it ended up being a little bit lower so that the front yard was much flatter, and that the backyard was able to not have a slope right from out the back door and straight down the hill. We are limited to what we can actually do on the site. There's a no disturb line that was placed by the neighboring development. So when we actually did an as-built, we ended up with an excess of 800 yards instead of less than 200 yards. And that material simply was moved to the adjacent construction site. We didn't have to move over any town roads. We actually didn't even need to use a truck. We basically was moved over there with a loader. And the effect of that is the neighboring site, that will be 800 yards of fill that they don't have to import. So all in all, it's a net benefit. There was a couple comments that we received from Beta Group. One was to extend the erosion control a little bit on both sides, and to sweep up the roadway, and to add a silt sack to this catch basin. So if we Jillian took some photographs, so she has some wattle here stockpiled on site. They extended the wattle around the site, across the front as well. And then if I move down here, I think this last photo shows the silt sack that was installed in the catch basin. There's a good shot. You can see the erosion control everywhere. I think they weren't able to actually get a street sweeper onto the site. But I don't think there was that much soil there. You know, the street sweeper wasn't able to sweep because of the freezing and snow conditions, but I'm sure it's all gone now, scraped up with the plow with the snow into the construction site. And none of that actual tracking was on the town road. It was on the private way to the left of the house. So that's it in a nutshell. We are asking for approval of the earth movement permit tonight. And
All right.
I don't know if there was any other recommendations from staff or from Beta Group, but as far as I could see, I think we've addressed all the concerns.
Well, thank you, Mr. Watson. So you've already cleaned up the street and basically you've already done the recommendations from Beta, it sounds like.
That's correct.
Abby, anything else you want to add to that, or?
No, those are only the two suggestions that Beta had recommended about the erosion controls and the silt stack being installed.
All right, so go see if there's comments from board members, and I'll start with Mr. McCusker this time.
No comments from me. Well done.
Mr. Paff?
I just had a quick question. That first topo map, you indicated there was a steep slope from the road down to the house or up to the house?
No, it's up to the house. So you can see we're at elevation 209, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 feet straight up. So when it was actually constructed, let's see, here's that was removed to make it a little more smooth.
So the plans called for it to be a much higher up on a hill house. And when it started, it looked, when you put actual eyeballs on the lot, you said, this is too high, so let's scrape it off.
Yes. It left a like a knob over here too, which was somewhat interfering with the site distance. You had to pull your car out a little farther than was comfortable. So flattening this all out just made a much better site for everybody.
Okay.
Sorry, Evan, you're referring to this. I don't think you're actually still straight sharing your screen, but I think Chris must be.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Now I don't know what I'm doing. There we go. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so it was this knob over here. And so it was the site. When we smoothed all this out, you can see much more clearly down Winter Street from the intersection. And then we lost all that that tight slope. So you can see here on the as-built plan, we're only a couple feet higher than the road now, and you can get a nice clear view right down Winter Street.
Yeah, I agree. It looks great. Have no problems with the end result. My concern is with the process. When you applied for the permit, they'd asked you the question, are you going to move more than 200 cubic? And you said no, and then you said, all right, no, we got to scrape all this off and move it. Then you built the house, and now you're here before us asking for forgiveness instead of permission. And I'm not saying I'm not going to give it. I'm fine with generally how this resulted, but it's concerning to me that this happens a lot with developers, that they say no and then they do it and they come to us. And I guess I'm speaking to Abby more than the applicant, that I would like to try to find something, and maybe we can't because it's up to the honesty or the integrity or whatever of the developer, to come to us before they put shovels in the ground for an earth material movement special permit. Done after the fact, it's not a special permit. It's already been done. So we're not permitting anything. So it's just a concern I have, and it seems to be ongoing since the planning board took over earth material movement special permits a few years back. So anyway, that's just a concern I had. And I guess, Mr. Ahern, maybe you can, all this fill that is now on green and green property, is it now considered native soil to that lot and they don't need to file for an earth material movement? Or are they going to have to come to us also?
Actually, they are coming to you at your next meeting. So, after tonight, we'll get you the stuff for next meeting. But the site behind will be on your next agenda, and it'll include this too. They are coming back to you for an amendment.
Are they including this soil as part of earth material movement special permit?
We did write the public hearing notice that way. So, yep. To amend your original special permit, including the earth material movement at that time.
All right, I just didn't know legally how that worked. Who owned the soil, whatever. Okay, but to answer your question, I guess that was my question. Just wanted some clarification on that.
Mr. Gotti?
No additional questions from me.
And I don't have any questions either. I think Mr. Paff covered it. Let's see. This is a public hearing, so let's see. Is there anyone attending who would like to speak? I do actually see a Q&A item. Is that? Let's see. Sometimes there's a question. It just says question from Rebecca Sullivan. Are you wanting to be recognized to speak on this?
She's got her hand up too.
Okay. Yeah, Abby, do you want to?
Yes.
And if you could, Ms. Sullivan, if you could just identify yourself and then.
Yes, of course. I'm Rebecca Sullivan. I live on 48 Wessex Drive. I'm a member of the Westwood Land Trust. I was just curious where the fill came for the fill. Looks like an awful lot of fill.
Share my screen once again. I probably shouldn't have taken it off. So we didn't bring in any fill. What we ended up doing is we reduced the grade here. So you can see the house is on a hill. Mm-hmm. It's above both Winter Street and this drive here. So when we lowered the grade, the existing grade behind the house was about 210 and it was lowered to 208. And in the pre-existing condition, we were up at, say, 214 in the front, and it was lowered to 212, 211-ish. So it was about a 2-foot drop directly in front and directly behind the house. And then we matched existing grade on Winter Street, on the abutting property, on Abbey Road, and at the landscape buffer. So all in all, there wasn't a lot of earth movement at all.
Great. It's a beautiful home. It looks incredible. I'm sure it's going to be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's another question. I don't know if that's covered by this, but from Fran Fusco, do you want to be recognized, or I can read the question. Will the soil be tested and certified clean? I would say that, so it's interesting, like had we granted the permit, it would basically have been, usually it's about a truck bringing in dirt or taking out dirt. And in this case, you said that you just used a front end loader or something to move it, to basically push the dirt onto the lot behind, right? So.
Well, it was moved to their materials processing area. They have, an operation going on there. And then in this case, I did check out the site. I was on site before and during some of the earth moving operations, and there was no evidence of prior development. I didn't see any previous foundations, any evidence of debris, ash, you know, refuse, anything of that nature. It was pretty much a wooded lot with very sandy soils, and we didn't encounter groundwater. So visually, there was no impact to the soil, and it would not be something that I would expect to have tested based off of, you know, how natural it looked.
All right, are there any other public comments or questions? Just looking to see, so I'm going to lower Rebecca's hand. And just looking at the attendees here, I don't see anyone else with their hand raised, and I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A. So let's bring it back to the board here. Let's see, do we have, what's our usual process here, Abby? Do we have any waivers or anything, or is it just a straight vote on this permit?
Right, no waivers needed, just on the earth material movement EIDR.
And then what happens, so are you saying that the green company is gonna come at the next meeting for the same thing, basically pick the dirt up from one property, take it to the other? Are they this is gonna be added into their thing as well? And
Right, well, they are coming to you with another application, so that will be included. They are coming for more than just that, but also it's updating an amendment to their previous approval.
So we have two hearings on one soil.
Yeah, or it's a consolidated hearing.
Yeah, I know.
all right, so I think what I would suggest is if someone could make a motion and to include, even though these conditions have already been apparently done, maybe noting that the conditions were have been satisfied, or that they, just right.
I'll make a motion that we approve the earth material movement special permit for Lot 5 Winter Street, with the conditions having been met as requested and described by Beta in their January 27th memo. I think that's it.
Second.
Just one question, Dave. Is it lot 5 or is it 45 Winter Street?
Oh, sorry. I was reading. Oh, it does say 45.
45
Sorry.
Winter Street.
40. I'll amend my motion to read 45 Winter Street, not Lot 5 Winter Street.
Second that.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Paff, seconded by Mr. McCusker. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. And I will call on Mr. Paff.
Yes.
Mr. Gotti.
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So we grant the EMM permit retroactively. And it's a public hearing, so if I could have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on 45 Winter Street.
Second.
So motion by Mr. Gotti, second by Mr. Paff to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Not seeing any discussion. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Paff.
Yes.
Mr. Gotti.
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And so the public hearing is closed. All right, thank you all. Thank you for taking
Good
care
luck
of
the rest of the way in the house.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. So that concludes 45 Winter Street on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda is, it's not a public hearing, but it is a public meeting, continued discussion of 480 Summer Street, the shared driveway special permit modification request. This is a planning board issued a shared driveway special permit back in 2017. And we had a hearing last year to talk about some of the concerns. I believe that some of the abutters are here as well as the property owners. And so we're back to check in on the status of this, and we have a couple of requests. So I think perhaps it would be helpful to maybe would Nora or Abby like to kind of summarize where we are, because at the last time we considered this, I believe had kind of planned for resolving some of the issues. And so tonight, what I'm thinking of is first have Nora and Abby talk about the status of things for what the town's been doing. And then we can hear from the applicants, or the property owners, as they would like to speak. And I do think we should open it up to the abutters. They've been involved in this from the beginning. And what I would like to do, though, is let's get the status of the situation out here first and understand what's being asked of the planning board, and then and hear from everybody there. And then I'd like to give anyone who wants to speak on this from the neighborhood there, if you could take like 2 to 3 minutes to state what your thoughts are, whatever you're going to say, and we'll hear from everyone in order, and then we'll go back to a discussion among the planning board members and see what actions we can take. So just to kind of outline the process there, if that helps. So with that, I think was Abby, you or Nora, who wants to start this?
Sure, I can start. So I just let in the applicant, but I tried to, and I may have lost them. I know the Mahanas were here just a few moments ago. I tried to let them in. So if they're watching, please go into the Zoom again. Mr. Mahana was here earlier in the meeting. So if we could come back in. And then we have the attorney for the homeowner of the new house at 472 is also on the call. But to summarize, in 2017, the planning board approved a shared driveway special permit it was one lot at 480 Summer Street, and then 2 additional lots were created. So there was a number of conditions that were outlined by the planning board, also shown on the plan for the shared driveway. So essentially it is one driveway coming off of Summer Street that would then feed into the existing house at 480 that's still there, a new house that is recently being constructed in the back at 472, and then a new one out front on Summer Street. That one has not been constructed yet. So the first request, well, to back up a little bit, once a special permit was issued by the planning board in 2017, a building permit was ultimately issued by the building department in 2018 for the creation of that house in the back. That's the new one at 472. And then over the summer, that house was finishing work. And then that's when I went out to the property to sign off. The process is that prior to a certificate of occupancy, I go out and inspect the site work to review with the planning board's approved plans and all of your conditions. And then I would make a recommendation to sign off on an occupancy permit. At that time in August, I realized there was a number of items that were not yet completed. So they did come to you in September. So most of you, well, I know Mike wasn't here in September, but at the September meeting, we were trying to work with the planning board and the applicants, both the new homeowner and the applicant at 480 Summer Street, on trying to come up with a resolution trying to get the work permitted and completed as soon as possible to allow temporary occupancy. However, at that time, the planning board had made some deadlines that you wanted to receive information, which were not met. So essentially that decision from September never went through. But we've been working with, the new owner and the applicant have been working over the last few months. We did go, myself and staff did go out on a site visit last week, and many items of the shared driveway special permit have now been completed. There's been, new work done. Some of your planning board requirements, such as the gates installed, the ties on the locks and signage that the planning board had required at the easement, has been installed. However, a major concern that has been ongoing is the flooding that's flowing off of the back of the site, off the easement into the properties on Westfield Street. So the owner of 472 has filed with the Conservation Commission. That hearing is still open. The Conservation Commission continued their hearing to their meeting on March 10th. The Conservation Commission has requested more information from the owner, and the project engineer requested more updates so that they could fully capture the stormwater that is running off and it is flooding that easement area and some of the property on Westfield Street. So we do have some abutters here tonight, and you did receive in your packet some photos and a video about that drainage. So we are aware that's an ongoing item. But the recommendation for you tonight is, there's one request from the special permit holders, the Mohanas, that live at 480 Summer Street. And the first request is to allow their garage to remain until that third lot is sold. There's a note on the 2017 plan that garage be relocated. However, at this time, that third lot, there's been no construction and it hasn't been sold yet. So I'm supportive of that recommendation. So that's one request for you. And then the second request is for the planning board to consider to allow temporary occupancy with getting a few of the outstanding items. So there's still a few items that we need that I can go over. I think there's 4 items. And then we would request the planning board authorize a permanent occupancy when all items are completed with a set deadline. And the recommendation is for that to be in June, mid-June. So I did go, based on our site visit recently, there's a couple items that are outstanding that aren't quite done. And the first one is to record the shared driveway special permit plans at the Registry of Deeds. Back in 2017, the lot line plan was recorded at Land Court, but the whole set of plans was not recorded at the registry. So I know we've been circulating those plans. I think most of you have signed it. If you haven't yet, if you could go to the stop by and get those signed. That way the applicant can then record that at the Registry of Deeds and then provide proof of recording of the full set of the special permit plans and that decision. And the purpose of that was so that going forward in the future, all requirements of the shared driveway special permit will be on file for any future owners. The second request to be received prior to temporary occupancy would be to also record an easement for that shared driveway, because the driveway is mostly on just the one lot at 472, but there should be an easement document that goes with it that allows access and access and maintenance of that shared driveway for all 3 properties. So it would be the second item needed prior to a temporary occupancy. The third item has to do with the the planning board's 2017 special permit required a buffer zone, a 50-foot buffer in the back and a 20-foot in the south side setback, where there is supposed to be no disturbance and no cutting of healthy trees. We weren't able to confirm that until recently, but today you did receive in your packet that I can pull up on a screen in just a moment. We did receive a plan and some photos of stakes in the ground that there was no encroachment in the rear on the 50-foot. The work is outside of the 50-foot, but there is a small encroachment on the south side. There is some leveling of a yard area and a fence installed within that 20-foot side setback. So the item that the planning board should talk about is, what do you want to do about that? And staff's, my recommendation would be to require additional tree plantings along that screening, because at this point we don't know exactly what trees may have been removed, but the purpose was to provide screening. That's why you had that condition in the first place. And then the fourth item prior to a temporary occupancy was for the owner 472 to complete the work of installing the small pebbles. It was 1 to 2 inch pebbles along the right side, the north side of the driveway, so that there's 20 feet all the way along the side of the shared driveway and also around the circle. When we went out last week there, or when I went out yesterday, before the snow, they were working on it, but it was early in the morning, it was 9:30, so it wasn't totally complete. So that should be completed prior to a temporary occupancy. The reason that was required by the planning board, it was to make sure that the fire truck could get completely around up the driveway and around the circle. And then to be submitted and required by June 15th. The recommendation would be for any landscaping that you require as part of the remediation for the encroachment into the buffer, that be installed, fully installed by June 15th, that the owner of 472 Summer Street should also stabilize the slope along the southern property line where there was that leveling. Also, number 3 would be for the owner of 472 to install permanent right turn only signs and an address sign out on Summer Street. Right now, there was some temporary signs. So the request would to have those permanent signs be added by June 15th. And then number 4 would be to complete the Conservation Commission's review, but then also make sure all aspects of the required stormwater management improvements be completed and installed, and as required by the Conservation Commission, to have that completed and certified prior to June 15th. So the applicant should be working diligently at the upcoming hearing for March with the Conservation Commission to submit a plan that keeps that stormwater on the property, gets that approval from the Conservation Commission, and then get that work done as soon as we're able to. I know we're in the winter right now with the snow, so that's why it should be lined up, ready to be installed as soon as the ground is ready to make those improvements. So essentially, this allows the request right now before you, it allows an option for a temporary occupancy with what can reasonably be done very quickly, and then sets a clear deadline when all the work needs to be done, and that most importantly, that's the flooding and the stormwater improvements as required by the Conservation Commission with their stormwater management review, and installing any remediation that you require about that side yard setback. And if you like, I can pull up the plan if you want me to share that screen to review that.
So let me jump in and just kind of from a high level, just to kind of help us work through all of this. There's 2 requests. And the first one is just to not demolish the garage or not move the garage. And so that is not a part of the rest of this. The second request is what it always was, which was granting occupancy for the new house that's been built. And actually right now we are still, isn't the building inspector fining, isn't there like a daily fine? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on that's to push things along here. So it's really 2 issues here. One is the garage, which I would like to suggest, does anybody have any issue with that, or like, is there any concern whatsoever about granting that request? Because then we could just focus on the second one. I don't think so. So then the second item is the one that has all the complicated pieces to it, but really it boils down to under what circumstances is this planning board comfortable granting temporary and then permanent occupancy, so that we can, when do we feel comfortable letting this proceed and stopping the the daily fines and everything that we're trying to push it along. Right? That's kind of, Abby, that's where we are.
Yes. And if you'd like, are you able to see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Rob, did you have a question or?
Yeah, can you just, let's just clarify real quick, the things that are within our purview as it relates to this special permit are basically the driveway and the buffer zone, right?
Yes.
And then the runoff component of all of that, which I'm very sensitive to for the abutters, that's really the province of the Conservation Commission, right?
Right. The Conservation Commission is the Stormwater Review Authority. So that's really under their purview, and it's the property owner's responsibility to correct that and provide those plans to the Conservation Commission for review and approval. But since we're looking for a way for the building commissioner to issue, a temporary and, ultimately a final occupancy and set a timeline, the suggestion was to set a date where they would have to complete all the work, including the drainage. So that's why we suggested June 15th to comply with what's required and completed, and what's required of what's by the Conservation Commission. But technically the stormwater review is under the Conservation Commission's review and authority.
And what's the status of conservation with regard to this hearing?
They requested more information and revised plans that are being reviewed by our Beta Engineering Services and the conservation agent. So their hearing was continued until May 10th.
Are we
March
able
10th.
to,
March
March
10th.
10th.
Oh.
March.
Okay.
are we able to tie the occupancy permit to work that is as yet undefined as to what needs to be done from the Conservation Commission's perspective?
The building commissioner does not have to issue a certificate of occupancy until the house lot is in full compliance with local regulations, and the stormwater regulations are among those. So the occupancy permit can be withheld until the stormwater management permit is issued and the work required under that permit is complete.
So even if we issued a June 15th, conservation doesn't have to adhere to that. If they have continued problems with what's being submitted, we can't hold their feet to the fire, right?
You wouldn't be
Nor do
holding
you
their
want
feet
to.
to the fire. What you would be doing is you'd be withholding a passbook savings account that the applicant is putting up to cover the cost of the items that need to be implemented in order to finish the job. So on June 15th, assuming all the work is done, then those funds are released to the applicant. If the work is not done by June 15th, those funds remain with the town. So
And-
that's a financial incentive to get the work done.
And a further financial incentive is if we pass the temporary occupancy piece, it effectively pauses the daily fines that are happening now. But if they didn't get everything done by June 15th, I assume that those fines would start again because the temporary occupancy permit would have expired.
I believe that's the case.
Anybody with any clarifying questions, or did the Mahanas or the Andersons or anyone else with it? Do they want to speak, or Abby?
I know Rosemary's here. If you have anything to add, to that. I haven't seen the Mahanas. They were on, and then I lost them. Let me check the list again.
All right, and then I'll ask for the other people who are attending, if you could either raise your hand or in the Q&A say if you would like to speak, and then we'll go one by one. Let's see, Michael, we are on, but having difficulty with audio. All right, so we'll see if, I wasn't clear, Abby or Rosemary, did you want to say something or?
Yes, if I could, the only, I just want to make sure, I'm not sure which topic.
Could you identify
Oh,
yourself?
I'm sorry, Rosemary Trainee, and I represent the Andersons. And Mr. Anderson could not be here tonight. He had surgery last week, so he was not able to be here tonight. So I'm here. And I just want to make sure which issue we're on, that I don't want to address something that isn't up for being addressed. So I don't know if we're still on the issue of the demolition of the garage, or if we're moved over to the issues that Abby set out of the 4 points for the temporary occupancy. And I have something to address on each one. So I just wanted to make sure which one we're on. That's all.
All right, why don't we talk about the garage first? Because if someone has anything to say on that, let's talk about that first.
Sure. The Andersons don't have any real objection to the issue of the demolition of the garage. The only question that they had is that if the condition is that they don't have to tear it down until they sell the lot, is there any time frame in which that's to happen? Or if they choose never to sell the lot, does that mean that the garage never has to come down? And so the question was really, is there like some time frame in which it will come down, regardless of whether or not they sell that other lot?
Abby, can you reiterate the condition pertaining to the garage back in 17 or whenever this?
Right. Well, there was a note on the plan for the garage to be removed or relocated. So normally we would check that at the time of occupancy. So if that third lot is looking for occupancy someday in the future, that's when we would want to see that completed, because that garage would be on that third lot.
What if the people who buy the third lot want the garage? They obligated to rip it down?
Or they could come back to the planning board and request that it remain.
So the garage, just to be clear, the garage is currently on the third lot, correct?
Yes.
It's not on the Andersons' property. Because the Andersons,
That's
right.
That's correct. It's
Their
across
lot
the street.
too.
It's across the driveway.
Okay.
The Muhanas use the garage now, but it's on the third lot. It's not on the lot where the Muhanas house is.
Right.
I guess I would just ask why that's even a concern. If either there's going to be a house that gets built there or there's a garage there now, I'm not following the concern.
It's only a concern because the plans called for it to be demolished. So the plans that the Mahanas submitted for approval by this planning board, their own plans called for that garage to be demolished. They no longer want to demolish it. At least they don't want to demolish it now. When they sell the third lot, if the new owners want to demolish it, then that's fine. But I think that the request to you is to remove the condition that needs to be done. So the special permit decision doesn't have a condition requiring the garage to come down. It wasn't a concern to the planning board whether the garage stayed or not. It's not in the way of any of the structures or the path that goes through. It's simply that it shows the plan that's part of the special permit calls for the structure to come down. So in order not to enforce that plan, we would need the planning board to grant the Mahanas request to allow the garage to stay. And that request can be to stay indefinitely or to stay until the lot is sold.
All right, yeah, I think that was my question too, because I'm thinking that we're back to it's a shared driveway. Like ultimately it was all about the shared driveway. And so, but this was on the plan. So yeah, I wasn't understanding the connection exactly. So
I think that the
so
Andersons' concern was just that whether or not that would have any impact on their getting a permanent occupancy certificate, because it would be a condition that was originally on the original set of conditions. And if it wasn't done, was that then going to adversely affect them because they're the ones that are trying to get a permanent occupancy certificate. So their only concern is that whatever gets done doesn't adversely affect them.
Okay, thank you.
terms of-
That's helpful. So I mean, do we even need to say, can we just remove it as a condition if that's, so that it's just not, we don't need to.
I mean, the original plans didn't even call for a date. So it just said to be removed. It could be any time in the future. Doesn't sound like they had to do it by a certain time. So that time still hasn't come yet.
Now, the way we would have a plan for a special permit, everything that's shown on that plan to be done has to be done before the special permit is effectuated.
Okay.
So unless you forgive them of that requirement, wasn't the planning board's requirement, it was the Mahana's original intention, but it's on the plan. So I think what you would need to do is issue a decision. So vote to not require removal of that structure. Strike the words to be removed from the special permit plan set.
And just to clarify, Rosemary, that would satisfy the Andersons' concern so that it doesn't hold up their occupancy. That's the primary concern as it relates to the garage.
Yes, the concern as it relates to the garage is that it just doesn't have any negative effect on whatever their occupancy situation is.
Mr. Chairman, there's at least one question in the Q&A regarding the garage, and some public may want to speak to it when the.
Yes,
planning board members are done.
Mr. Gillis, you said that you have I think you're the only one that has a question on the garage, El. So yes, do you want to go ahead and ask that question?
Just procedurally, it's my understanding that any change.
Sorry, if you could identify yourself first.
Hi, Michael Gillis, 136 Westfield Street. We were not aware that this was even on for this evening. We were understanding that there were just the issues with the Andersons. So we're kind of sideswiped by this, but, and not that we have any thought one way or the other, but my understanding is that any change to the plan is by definition, a major modification and requires a full public hearing. So I'm just curious as to why there was no notice of this to anybody. I didn't see it on the, when Abby sent out the hearing for tonight. I don't believe that that was included, and I'm not sure why it's even on for tonight's meeting.
So the planning board has to determine if the request that's before you is a minor modification. And if you vote to determine this to be a minor modification, it does not require a public hearing to make this change. The fact that it's a change to a plan or a change to a decision is not the threshold for a hearing. It's a formal amendment as opposed to a minor modification.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora.
Right. And
Are there any other questions about that garage? And then we could discuss that issue.
I can just pull it up on the screen if people want, just so we can see exactly what we're talking about. It's this garage. Can you see right here? So as you come up from Summer Street, there's the existing garage on this lot that's yet to be built that serves this house at 480. It's the garage right here. Yep. Okay. So there was a note that says to be relocated.
Okay. So does everyone knows where the garage is now? And as Nora outlined, since it's a change to the plan, we would have to determine whether it's a minor modification. And if we did determine that it was not a minor modification, then it triggers the whole public hearing process. So I think that in the interest of focusing this, we should deal with that issue first. Would anyone disagree with that, or board members? So does someone want to propose?
I'll make a motion that we consider the relocation or removal of the one-car garage as depicted on the plans be considered a minor modification. That is the request not to remove it at this current place and time. So I make a motion that it's considered a minor modification to the plans.
Thank you, Mr. Paff.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. McCusker. So is there any discussion about whether or not that's a minor modification? Seeing no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote to determine that the removal of the garage issue is it a minor modification? And yes means that you think it's a minor modification. So Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the board, having determined that that is a minor modification, would proceed to a discussion of whether or not to grant that minor modification request. Or directly to a motion to grant that request.
I'll make a motion to grant the request to maintain the one-car garage on the permitted plans.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion from Mr. Paff and a second from Mr. McCusker. Is there any discussion? And I would say that's a little different, like their request was to sort of indefinite. It was saying maybe in the future when it's the property and it's sold. And also what we're doing is we are modifying it to remove this from the plan altogether. So that means it could stay there forever, or they can do whatever they want to with it. It's just no longer a part of this plan. And
I actually heard that even a little bit differently, Dave. It sounded like we were making the garage part of the permanent plan. So I just want to make sure that the language that we're using reflects what the request is.
My understanding is once they sell that property, whoever buys that property, they can do whatever they want with that garage.
They can, but let me just give a caveat. So the garage is on the edge of the property. So if someone wants to develop that property and put up a new single-family home, they'll have to go for a building permit. And when the building commissioner reviews their permit, he will note that there's an existing structure that's on the edge without a setback. And it is very likely that at that time, the garage will be ordered removed. But what it does is it takes it out of the special permit criteria and puts it into the development of that lot. So it becomes a building commissioner's issue as opposed to a planning board issue as part of the special permit. And that allows the special permit to be fully effectuated when the Andersons complete their work and when the Mahanas record the plan and the easement.
so to be clear, the motion is, this all stems from a notation on the plan which says that this garage was going to be removed prior to the sale of lot 3. And so the actual technical motion is to remove that notation from the plan, right, Nora?
That's right. So you're not requiring it as part of the special permit.
Yeah,
It
we're not-
still
we're
may
not-
be required in the future by the building commissioner, but the planning board is not requiring it.
But it's not a vote to like alter, to like delete it from the drawing or to require that it be torn down at some point. It's to remove the notation that was a part of the plan that was going to require that it be relocated prior to occupancy, right? Or prior.
May I suggest rather than remove it, you say waive enforcement?
Yeah, does that, I think, Chris, did you make the, or who made the motion?
Chris made the motion.
So you want me to reword the motion to include the words waive enforcement? Okay, I make a motion that we alter the condition on the plans to a situation of waiving and enforcement of the removal of the one-car garage.
Second.
Seemed wordy, but does that work?
I think so.
Okay.
Second.
Does everyone on the board understand what the motion is? Any other questions? And this is substantially the same as we just talked about, whether or not it was a major modification, minor modification. And so this further discussion here. Does anyone believe that's inconsistent with the previous vote? It's still a minor modification, right?
I think the actual change in the language reaffirms that it's a minor modification.
So we're clarifying that. All right. So there's a motion from Mr. Paff. It's been seconded by Mr. McCusker. Is there any further discussion? I will have a roll call vote. Mr. Paff.
Yes.
Mr. Gotti.
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So I think that grants the first request.
Dave, can I bring something up that I hate to do this, but Abby, can you pull up that plan again?
Yep.
This is not about the garage. It's about something else that I noticed. On the lower part, right where your cursor is to the right, it says shed to be removed.
That has been removed.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Just didn't want to go down this road again. Okay.
Okay. All right. So that's issue 1 is off the table. So now let's go back to the large, the more complicated issue, all the items related to the conditions by which we would authorize the temporary occupancy permit. And so I want to go back to, let's see, first of all, Rosemary, the attorney for the Andersons, who are the homeowners on the lot 2. We'll recognize you had some questions about that, and then I will go to the, we'll hear from the abutters if they would like to ask questions about that.
Okay, so as I understand it from Abby, there are 4 conditions to the issuance of the temporary occupancy. One is for the plan to be signed by the board and then recorded at the registry, which the Muhanas are supposed to do. The second one is to draft and execute an easement agreement, which the Muhanas have to do. The third one is for the Andersons to address the issue of the 5-foot encroachment on the south side 20-foot buffer, which Abby had indicated that could be done by the plan to plant trees as per her recommendation. And then the fourth one was the crushed stone, which I actually think they finished before the snow hit the other day when Abby was there and they were working on it, but she left before they had finished doing what they were doing. My only concern is, and whatever the board wants to address about the trees, that's fine. My concern is the things that the Anderson's temporary occupancy certificate is predicated on, but over which they don't have any control. And those are the 2 things that the Muhanas are required to do. So my only concern with those is that since the temporary occupancy will stop the issue of the fines, until the Muhanas do both of those things, even if the Andersons resolve the other 2 issues that are on them, the fines in theory would continue until the Muhanas do what they're supposed to do. And so my only concern is that whether or not there can be some time frame put on that for the Muhanas to do those 2 things so that the fines won't continue, even though the Andersons have done everything that they're supposed to do to stop the fines.
Thank you. Nora, did you look like you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so I would just want to point out that the 2 requirements that the Muhanas are now responsible for are required. They're on the special permit plan set. They're on I believe it's the second sheet of the special permit plan set, and they're required to be accomplished prior to the sale of either lot 2 or lot 3. So the Andersons really didn't even have a right to purchase the land that they own until that was done. So there's already a time frame on it, and it's well exceeded. So these are 2 items that have to be done immediately. And if the Andersons are interested in doing it more quickly than the Muhanas, it doesn't say who has to do it. So the plan can be recorded by either the Andersons or the Muhanas, as can the easement. But as far as a time frame, the time has long passed. These were required to be done before either of the lots were sold.
Right, but the easement, I believe the Mohanas have to sign the easement, though. It can't be recorded without them signing it.
And I think they have said that they are willing to. But I don't know what, I don't know that the planning board can put a more of a date requirement on it than is already in place. It was required to have been done, so it has to be done immediately.
Okay.
All right.
And then
Abby.
I just have a question for Rosemary though, on the fourth item about completing that kind of the riprap, the crushed stone.
Yes.
If I could just share my screen again. So when I was there, yeah, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
So yesterday when I was there, it was at 9:30 a.m. and it was, mostly done up to here. But there was, when we went out last week, there was, it was down to 17 feet right here. And it was 18 feet on the south side of the circle. So the question is for Rosemary, will the stone be added to those areas as well to make it 20 feet all the way around? Or were you looking for relief from the planning board for that? Because if so, that's what you should ask the planning board now. But it was just a small area right here on one side of the circle where it was 17 feet, and then there was some grass, and then there was an area where some of those stones could have been added to make the 20 feet on both sides of the circle.
Yeah, yes, I believe there was some discussion when we were out at the site about putting grass pavers or crushed stone on just one side and not on the other side, because there was a tree that's very close to the other side. And that as long as one of the two portions of the shared driveway was wide enough that would take care of the issue of egress. And so what they were going to do was they were either going to put crushed stone or those grass pavers along that, along the side that was 18 to get it to 20, and not try to do anything on the other side where the tree was, because the tree is very, very close to the other side of the driveway.
Right, so we had also discussed whether you wanted to ask the board to waive that requirement, to allow less than 20 foot of width there. So the intention of the 20-foot width is to allow a fire engine to get up, around, turn, and leave. The fire engine can already get to both driveways with the way that the driveway has been widened. They can safely get to both properties, fight a fire at either house. The problem with having less than 20 feet there is it's more difficult for a fire engine to go around the circle and turn. That's not to say it can't fit. The emergency egress path that goes out to Westfield is well less than 20 feet wide. So if there's an emergency situation where the emergency vehicles have to approach the properties from that direction, they won't have 20 feet to start with as they're coming up to the circle. They'll only have 20 feet once they get beyond it. So the question is the planning board willing to waive that down from 20 feet to not require further disruption of both the Mohanas and the Andersons property around that? Or do you feel it's important to have the full 20 feet so a fire engine can easily turn around the circle? So I think that's the question that is before the planning board.
And that 20 feet is prescribed by our local fire department.
It is. What it does is it allows the truck to easily turn without clipping any vegetation or without any grade change in the area, to have a flat area. The truck is not 20 feet wide, but it has the way the tail shifts, right? The turning radius needs 20 feet to make a single turn movement.
All right. I think that we should work through the whole list unless anyone else wants to jump in on that item. But let's hear from, I think that, did the Mohanas want to say something, or I thought it was, I see.
Mr. Mohana? Michael, I think you're on the phone.
There are comments in the chat that suggest he's not, the audio is not working for him.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Mrs. Mohana.
Okay.
Sorry, it's so late for you guys. It's been a long time. The one issue was in the beginning is the basketball court. And nothing was mentioned about it tonight. Also, when we sold the lot in the agreement and the closing, it's supposed to be columns on Summer Street. And Mr. Anderson always said he was going to do it. And I don't hear anything about it, doesn't talk to us about it. I don't know what's happening. And also the easement was ruined by the equipment for 2 years. He's been using it. That's the only way he could build his house. And he was promised to do an asphalt on it. It's all cracked. So I'd like to know if he's gonna continue it or to put a new coat on it.
All right, I don't know if we have an answer for those. Why don't we, why don't we proceed to, I think Mr. Gillis wanted to say something, and maybe Scotty, I'm looking in the Q&A here. And so what I would do is recognize anyone else here, the abutters, for two minutes or so to say what they would like to say. And yes, I see a lot of comments, but do you still want to speak?
Who would you like to speak first?
We just, Mr. Gillis, we just unmuted him.
Yeah, Mr. Gillis, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I don't have so many comments as I do. I have questions. Part of the plan, which we've been waiting for 3.5 years now, is the installation of speed bumps. Have those been installed with the new 500-foot driveway that was put in last week?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, we did go out last week and confirm that the speed bump that was in, as well as the gates and the ties and signs on the gates.
When were the ties put in? Because I think we sent you videos this morning. I think Scotty sent you videos of about 10 cars going up and down last week. So are those in place now?
They were when we went out last week. We went out Tuesday or Wednesday last week.
Tuesday.
Okay. My understanding that on 8/22/20, you ordered that funds be put into the passbook account, so work will be done in 30 to 60 days and not past December 1st. Has that money been taken by the town since then? And if not, why not?
It was initially given to the town by way of check, which was not proper. It was returned to the Andersons. Miss Tranny has indicated to me that she has passbooks ready to be picked up once the number is determined for the remaining work, and I will get them and we will keep them in the town safe.
What I don't understand about that is that the work was supposed to be completed by December 1st, or the town was going to do it. So why are we still waiting for those to be deposited? I thought the town would have started the work by now.
Well, you're not going to get much work done out there right now, are you, sir?
Well,
yes, you will. There's plenty of work. They put in a 500-foot driveway last week and took out portions of the basketball court the week before. So clearly plenty of work is being able to be done if it wants to be done.
If I could just remind everyone that meeting that we had back in September, there was a tentative agreement that was worked out, and the planning board voted to allow for the issuance of the temporary certificate of occupancy if that tentative agreement was formalized, if the passbook account was established, and if the work was done by a certain date, and if the stormwater management application was filed by a certain date. None of those things were accomplished. So the planning board's vote in September went to nothing. The work was not accomplished then. We're back today asking again for the planning board to consider allowing for a temporary certificate of occupancy based upon work that has since been done, based upon a passbook savings account being established and the conditions that you're discussing. So what happened in September was a vote by the planning board to allow the issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy if 4 items were accomplished. The 4 items were not accomplished, the certificate was not issued, and fines have continued on a daily basis since they first were started in August.
So there is a passbook account now with the town, or there is not?
There is not yet.
And when will that be completed by?
Well,
Yeah, so actually, if I could just, as Nora, what you were saying there, the key thing is the fines are happening. So yeah, all this was, we had a tentative agreement and it was not met. And the consequence was that the fines started. And how much are the fines and who's?
They exceed $100,000 at the moment.
So it's not, so there may not be a passbook account, but there's also $100,000 of fines that has happened. Today, what we're trying to do today is come up with what's the path forward from here. Under what circumstances would this board stop the fines with the believing that that there will be a better agreement? What can we do? So that's kind of where we're at. Is there anyone else of the abutters who would like to, or did you have other different questions, Mr. Gillis?
Oh, sorry.
I just asked, sorry, I didn't mean to totally, I know you had a bunch of things, so I didn't mean to cut you off completely there.
One issue that Nora just spoke about was the circumference of the circle. That was at the request of the fire department. Have they had any input on this before your board goes ahead and changes what they had recommended?
Their recommendation is for 20 feet of paved surface. They are not recommending that the planning board decrease that. The applicant is requesting that the planning board consider that. That's a request before the board, and the board should decide what they think is appropriate.
Okay, if you can indulge me, I know it's late. I've got a couple more questions. One is, why June 15th? We raised this issue last April. We sent you videos. Nothing was done from May to October. Then all of a sudden it was the fall. The spring is when all this water comes flying down our driveway. It came flying down today. The water is pouring out into Westfield Street as of this morning, which is going to be black ice. There's already been 3 accidents in that intersection. So why do we have to wait till June 15th? June 15th, you do all this work and it's going to be dry July and August, and the permit's allowed. We won't be able to test the system because there won't be much of a need for it. But why can't this be done, April 1st, May 1st? Why June 15th?
June 15th is the deadline for the completion of work. It is not a time when they begin work. June 15th is selected as a deadline for completion of work because the work includes landscaping, and landscaping cannot always be accomplished in early April, but should not be accomplished between June 15th and September 15th. That's the season where you don't want to plant. So we are setting the date at the outside date at June 15th. All work, including the landscape work, should be done by June 15th, or the fines will have to start up again.
Why can't that be May 1st?
I don't think that gives enough time to accomplish the work, including the plantings, many of which are not available in April and early May. So we're looking for a date that works to get the project completed. And I think that if we don't know what kind of a winter we're having or how late spring is going to come, but I think it would be unreasonable to pick an earlier date. That's not to say work shouldn't start. It should be finished by June 15th. If possible, it should begin April 15th.
It was supposed to be finished December 1st, and now we're talking June 15th. So I don't understand. And we just put a 500-foot driveway in January. Why we can't get this done sooner than June 15th?
I think it would be unreasonable to ask for it before June 15th because our experience is that construction in the spring takes much longer than expected, especially when it requires landscaping that has to be acquired from nurseries. So I think June 15th is a very reasonable date. Keep in mind that this is a date that allows the temporary certificate of occupancy to be acted upon. After that date, they require a full certificate of occupancy. They lose the temporary certificate of occupancy. And if the work is not done, fines will begin again. So I think this is a reasonable process. We had hoped to do this in the fall, but everything did not come together when we tried to do it in the fall. And that's why fines have continued. And we have now issued tickets that exceed $100,000. This is a significant issue. And the town is doing all it can. But to impose a date that's earlier than we believe the work can be accomplished wouldn't get anyone anywhere.
Great, thank you, Nora. And why don't we? I think it might be helpful, Abby, if we could pull up the or the conditions, like the details of this, and if they would help us to walk through it. But am I correct in my? The question is, do we have an agreement here that this board would support to allow the temporary occupancy? And if we put that up on the screen of the different elements of that, maybe we could work through them one by one. And really, at the end of the day, it's like an all or nothing kind of thing. Like if we don't agree with all this, then what's the other option? Like basically, if we're not satisfied with this, the fines continue and nothing gets fixed.
Right. Okay. So can you see that on my screen?
Yes.
Right.
All right. So go ahead.
So the first two are about recording, as soon as possible, those, the special permit plans at the registry and the easement. But the one the planning board should discuss is this encroachment on the side yard, about 5 feet into the side yard setback. So if you can see, this is the updated plan we received. Here is the line of the 20-foot side yard that was supposed to have no tree removal, but there was some leveling of the yard and a fence installed right here where the cursor is. So the stake that you had some photos in your packet, there's a stake about 5 or 6 feet inside the fence. There's no way to exactly know how many trees were removed. So my recommendation would be for the planning board to require new trees to be planted along the full extent of this side yard, preferably evergreens, at least 10 feet tall at the time of planting along this side buffer where this work was done over here. And then we have the fence in the rear is highlighted right here, and the approximate limit of work is shown on the plan here, and the 50-foot buffer is back here. So the condition two.
Why don't we talk about, so on the trees, how do people feel about basically the tree, the no cut buffer was violated. The solution is to plant trees in that buffer now.
And there's a fence there currently?
Yes, Mr. Anderson, though, we'll move the fence in, or that 5 feet in if necessary, depending on where they want the trees planted and whether Abby wants the fence moved back.
Right. So it's up to the planning board tonight. So the planning board, planning board members, you could require that the fence be moved back to be outside that 20-foot and trees be planted, or you could require tree plantings where it is now with the fence within that 20-foot. So that's what you should.
Exactly. He knows the plan. And why you wouldn't believe him?
All right, Mr. Paff, you have any?
It seems to be, given all that's taken place, this is a more than reasonable request, given they weren't supposed to do anything in that area. And they not only cut stuff down, they put a fence up. This, what Abby has laid out, seems to me to be completely reasonable. And I think moving the fence back, following the spirit of or the intent of the special permit would be in order as well. And just to be sure, I think all the plants, all the trees that are planted should be done so on the other side of the fence, not on the house side of the fence. Is they're intended to be a buffer, not landscaping trees for the property owner.
I agree. Move the fence back and plant the trees on the outside of the fence.
All right. And then the fourth item there is just the gravel. Was that already done?
I think the first part along the north side of the driveway was mostly done yesterday, but the request from the Anderson is, would you be willing to give a little relief to the full page, the full 20 feet around the circle? There was a small portion on the north side where it was 17 feet, and then a little bit on the south where it was 18 feet.
And the 17 feet areas where there was a tree, those close by?
It was close by, but there's still room to add some more the small stones that it was being added yesterday. Those could be added there without impacting the tree.
I think what you, excuse me, I think what you'd want to do, if you do want them to stick with the 20 feet as the fire chief recommends, I think you'd want them to pick up that extra foot on the outside circumference of the circle, not on the inside. So on the inside where the trees are, it's just too tight to encroach on those trees by putting more stones or putting grass pavers there. But on the outside, you could do it. You're altering the Mahanas and the Andersons' yards by doing it, but it's a possibility. It could be accomplished and it could achieve the 20-foot width around the circle.
It seems to me that this 20-foot distance should have been page 1 of the shared landscape special permit back in 17. So I would not be in favor of altering it, given that it has to do with the safety and full procedure following of our fire department. So I would not be in favor of reducing from the 20 feet. How they achieve that, I guess I'm not overly concerned as long as the fire department signs off on it.
I tend to agree with Chris on that. And the only other question, I mean, is the crushed stone adequate for that, or does it need to be paved?
I believe that the pavement width only has to be 16 feet, and then 2 other feet can be crushed stone or grass pavers, or a combination of both. So I think if you're requiring them to stick to the 20 feet, I think there's still some relief that's needed to allow for it to be all taken on the outside. So allow the circular drive to be expanded on the outside. It won't quite fit the footprint exactly as it's shown on the plan, because we've determined that there's just not enough room around the trees to have an inner circle come in against the trees without killing them. So I think it's important to save those trees, and to do that, you would pick up pavement with either the gravel or grass pavers on the outer edge of the circumference.
Abby, there's no topographical challenges to add those additional 3 feet on the outside?
No, it was a grass area or landscaped area.
Yeah.
There's some regrading that's necessary, but it's not significant because we're only talking about going 2 feet into the pavement, into the grass with pavement.
And it's dirt now anyway, where it is right now. There's nothing there.
Sounds like we have a plan or consensus on that item. Just to go back to the first 2 are just literally recording things at the Registry of Deeds, right? So
They are, but the second one requires an agreement between the Mahanas and the Andersons. So the easement is on the shared driveway that runs partially on the Andersons' property and partially on the Mahanas' property. So the 2 parties have to sign an easement agreement. So it does require cooperation.
Has there been any attempt at the authoring of an agreement
I have
by
not
either
seen
party?
it.
So this has been a condition since 4 years ago, and no one has started to write this up. That seems, it's not surprising to me we're back here on Groundhog Day hearing this all over again. This is kind of ridiculous. We have to, oh, I'm sorry. I'm really frustrated about all this.
And I share Mr. Paff's frustration too, but I mean, the hard thing here is that, you know, I think we want to like fix the problems, and the biggest problems are kind of are even further down on the list here, but we don't have control over a lot of things here, but we have the fines.
Dave, the biggest problem this whole thing has is the lack of spirit of cooperation to get this done by these two parties. That's what I see as the biggest problem here. We met in September, came down with a decision, and it was ignored. So who's to say this is not going to happen again? These fines, unless they're collected, unless they start collecting, they mean nothing. It's getting very frustrating. I understand why all the abutters are completely frustrated, because they're sitting there on the outside watching nothing happen to solve this. And we have one 30-second comment from one of the applicants here, and she brings up a basketball court, something we're not even talking about. There's nothing here that seems like both parties want to get this thing done. They just want to keep lobbing things at each other to prolong this whole process. I apologize, I'm rambling. I can't believe this is taking this long.
So I believe we are at a point where both parties do want to get this behind them. And there are several issues. So the main issues that require cooperation are part 2 of this punch list for temporary occupancy, where we need both parties to agree and sign an easement agreement so that it can be recorded. But the other item that was brought up by Mrs. Muhana about the basketball court, the Anderson's basketball court was constructed partially on the Muhana's property. So that's an issue that it's not part of the special permit concern. It's a private property matter between the two that requires cooperation to solve. The other issue that Mrs. Muhana brought up was potential damage to the emergency access way that goes down Westfield Street. The pavement of that access way is showing wear that Mrs. and Mr. Muhana believe are attributed to the construction vehicles that came on to build the Anderson's home. Again, not part of the special permit property. That's a private property matter issue that needs to be worked out between the parties. But this one for the easement is a matter that has to be worked out between the two parties in order to allow the special permit to be fully effectuated. So we are stuck here until the two parties agree to do this. And the way that Abby has developed these two punch lists, this first one is the minimum threshold. Until this agreement is done, the fines cannot stop. A temporary certificate of occupancy cannot be issued until this agreement is signed by both parties and recorded.
I have no problem drafting the easement agreement. I just can't, the Muhanas historically have not been represented by anyone, and it makes it a little difficult to get certain things signed, negotiated, whatever you want to call it. I'm happy to do it. And I understand everyone's frustration, but in fairness to the Andersons, they have done a number of items that were not part of the construction of their house that had been sitting, not having been done since the Muhanas got this plan approved 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was, to try to get these things done, the speed bump, the gates, all of those things. And they are trying to get everything done. I'm not going to address Mrs. Muhana's issues because I don't think they're relevant to tonight, and they're not relevant to why we're here. And I don't want to go down that road because it's just going to, I think it's going to waste everybody's time. But I'm certainly more than happy to draft the easement agreement.
I think that would be very helpful.
I'd record the plan, but I don't have it. I don't even know where it is. So
I think so. That's yeah, that would be very helpful if you draft the agreement and then, so then these are the 4 things to get to temporary occupancy. And then shall we go to the to discussion of the rest of this? To the permanent occupancy.
Mr. Sherman? Hello?
Yes.
I can speak, please. This is Mr. Mohana.
Yes, Mr. Mahana, thank you.
You know, several times I talked to Mr. Brian Anderson and I told him, please, let one person from the family decide on all the decisions. I think my wife, she knows better than me regarding that situation. Please meet with her. And I hope he's hearing me, you know, because we discussed that, okay? We done everything on our side regarding the shared driveway. You know, the fire hydrant, we cannot put the gate because he wasn't finished the building the house and the landscaping and stuff like that. So we wait for him, but actually he done the gate when he done. But after that, they've been using the gate every single day. And that's an easement. Easement belong to us only. And everybody, landscaping people, open a gate, go back and forth, you know, anytime, all right? So another thing here, regarding the shared driveway, the easement, the one on lot 7. This is last week I heard about supposed to be easement on that. I didn't know that before. So I'm more than happy to call my attorney and process that the application for easement on that site.
All right, why don't we, I'm going to interrupt you and just, so item number 1, you just need to record the plans. Item number 2, Rosemary is going to draft something and agree to it, and that one will be taken care of. 3 and 4 are on the Andersons, right? I mean,
Yes.
so looks like all we should be able to get those 4 items there. So then down to the stuff that's even more significant here is the nothing's more significant, but let's go over what do we have? 4 items. So we have the landscaping in the buffer,
Which is really the one from up above.
Right.
It's just doing it.
Yep, making sure it's completed by June 15th.
all right, landscape measures to stabilize the slope.
That's also part of the one above.
Yep.
Those 2 are really part of that one above.
And,
It's just till they have till June 15th to do it.
And that number 2 is the one that really will take till June 15th for grass to grow. So we're looking to stabilize that side slope with grass or other plantings, and we need until June 15th. Even if it's planted in late April, we need time for it to grow and actually stabilize.
All right, and then the 3rd item is a right turn only and permanent address sign. So again, not a huge lift there.
And they've been ordered, and they put up temporary ones. They ordered the permanent ones, and I think when we were out there on that at the site visit, they had been ordered, but they hadn't come in yet.
All right, but I think item number 4 is kind of the big one, right? What exactly does item 4 mean here?
So I think I can explain that. The stormwater management permit will include underground recharge areas that are being constructed on the property to take the water that's currently flowing off the site and allow it to stay on the site, be drained into the ground in a slow manner so that it won't roll off. So there's a plan that the Anderson's engineer have submitted to the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has its peer review engineer from Beta reviewing that, and they found that plan to be insufficient and are requiring additional stormwater recharge areas on the plan. So now the 2 engineers are working together to form a plan that can be acceptable to the Conservation Commission. They're coming back to the Conservation Commission on March 10th. The hope is that the Conservation Commission will be able to approve the plan that's presented on March 10th, and that the work to install those recharge basins can occur as soon as the ground is ready, which will be sometime in late April, early May.
Okay, so is it very clear to all the parties what their responsibilities are on this?
And I just
Yes.
have one question before you move to a vote or take questions from the outside. Abby, maybe you can help. What is the dollar amount that's required in the passbook savings? And is it enough to cover the work that should get done if they don't complete the work?
We don't know the exact amount yet. So we'll need the landscape restoration plan. So that's something we have suggested as being required to be submitted prior to a temporary occupancy. So I don't know the exact amount yet.
The two passbooks that I presently have, one has $72,000 in it, and the other one has $8,600 in it.
So
I believe the $72,000 was established as amount that was to cover the cost of putting the asphalt on the driveway, to cover the cost of a significant number of trees, not just in the 20-foot buffer, but in the 50-foot buffer as well. And it was to cover other items of work that have all been finished, the signs, the speed bumps, all of that was part of it. The smaller account was just to cover the cost of the fire hydrant, which we know is in place. The only issue related to that is whether or not come spring, the DPW will require new grass to be planted where the area was disturbed. But that's an issue that can be addressed later. That's pretty minor. The 70,000 though, it's not clear until the Conservation Commission issues its decision on the stormwater management permit, how much that work will cost. So we don't know that the 70,000 is enough to cover the conservation required stormwater management work, but it's more than enough to require the work that remains to be done under the special permit.
And the Conservation Commission would be free to order something when they issue their order to cover the work that needs to be done there as well.
They don't typically do that. Typically
know.
what they do is withhold their certificate of compliance, but I suppose they could.
They could, and there's a number of things they could do, but so if the planning board's comfortable with the two passbook savings accounts that the Attorney Traney currently has, I'll be happy to take possession of those by the end of the week.
So my question there is like, how does that fit into all of this? I mean, we should definitely have that, those passbook accounts before we. Scotty?
Right, I think that's in part of, part 2 of number 3.
Okay.
And we can, once Abby gets the number, I can work with Mr. Ahern to figure out whether to put it into one account or whatever. Right now, I just did them. They were the two that were originally from before, and that's where the two numbers came from. So those are the two passbooks that I have. So there is sufficient money in there to cover number 3.
All right. So if we assume that the money is in the passbook account, and then let's just assume that people don't do what is there a solution here where the town goes in and like was originally planned in September? Is that still like a viable option that would get us to a place where we can never hear about this again?
So if the 4 items that are shown here have to be completed before we issue the temporary certificate of occupancy, and then the money for the landscaping under part 3 is held in a passbook account, the certificate of occupancy temporary certificate of occupancy is granted, and June 15 comes along and those trees are not planted, the town can take the money from that passbook savings account and plant those trees. But there's not sufficient funds. I just want to make it clear. There's likely not sufficient funds here to handle the conservation work. What you're looking to do is secure the special permit work. And that's the only real money for that is this landscaping money under part 3.
But it seems like there's sufficient money to cover the special permit requirements as laid out in number 3. And so if there was a need for additional funds, as Mr. Ahern was just laying out, the Conservation Commission could stipulate that at the time they make their decision.
Right, that's right. That should be within their purview and not yours. You should only be protecting or acquiring the funds to cover the work that's necessary for the special permit.
And it's, and Nora, I think it's fair to say that the neighbors very concerned about water runoff it should be addressed by the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
In
And
their March meeting.
yes, and I believe it has been to date, and the Conservation Commission is taking it very seriously and has their peer review engineer working closely with the Andersons engineer. And I do not believe for a moment that the Conservation Commission will issue an approval that's not satisfactory. They will make sure that all of the stormwater is contained on the site.
My point is, and I hear you, Nora, but my point is that the neighbors who are on this particular meeting should also pay close attention to the Conservation Commission meeting in March so they can get their concerns about water runoff heard by the Conservation Commission.
Sorry, I'm muted. All right, I'm looking at the Q&A. I think all of us who are panelists can see the Q&A area. Is there anything in there that any board members would like to address? Anything that, otherwise I'm thinking that, are we at a point where we want to discuss a motion or something here? I think we're all just reading over your comments. I'm not going to read them all out loud, but I'm just looking to see if we've.
If I could just respond to some comments that there's some comments from Rebecca Sullivan here. One of them in particular is that I don't think the town followed through with the Mahanas plans. I think it's still misunderstood that the town's enforcement here is to not approve the special permit effectuation. So this doesn't come before the town until there's a sign off requested for the special permit. We're at that point now. The Mahanas got their special permit approved back in 2017, but there was no deadline for them to do the work by 2018, by 2019, by 2020. It's only when the new property owner is looking to occupy their home. That's the point where the town comes in and checks to see have the special permit requirements been properly carried out. And that's the point where Abby visited the site in August when the request was made and determined that they had not been carried out appropriately. And that's why we've been in this process now for several months to get to the point where everything is in line with the special permit approval. But there was no opportunity for enforcement before then. So I think that's what's not understood here. The town does not have the right to require people to do work on their property. They only can require that when there's a issuance of a certificate of occupancy requested. Otherwise, the Mahanas would not have had to do any of that work. They do not have to sell the third lot if they don't choose to. It's their property and they can live with it the way it is. If they choose to sell the third lot, when that time comes, then we'll have to make sure that that lot is developed in accordance with the special permit as well.
All right, thank you, Nora. Any other, Mr. McCusker, do you have any thoughts? You were here for the original.
Yeah, that seems like a million years ago and nothing's gotten done. I have nothing to add. I suggest we move to a motion and vote it up or down.
Mr. Gotti? Anything?
I think the path laid out by Abby in the document we were just reviewing seems like the prudent path, and then, you know, the legitimate concerns of the stormwater, as Mr. Ahern has laid out, are the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and that's the place that should get addressed. And it seems like the Andersons are taking that seriously. Beta and the Conservation Commission are taking that seriously, and so they should see that through. But I think that there's adequate funds in the passbooks to have us, kept whole on the requirements as it relates to the special permit.
All right, so I think that if a motion would get our notes here. So what the motion would be is a motion to authorize the building commissioner to allow temporary occupancy upon completion of the 4 items. That's that final punch list. And then all outstanding items to be completed by June 15th prior to permanent occupancy. Would someone like to make that motion?
Since you read that, can I just say
So moved.
I know it's weird. The chair generally doesn't make the motion, so.
No, you didn't. I moved what you said.
Second.
And seconded, who seconded?
Mike.
I did.
Okay, Mike seconded. All right, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? And again, it's, yeah. All right, let's roll call vote. Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, well, good luck. I hope that this works out, and that's especially good luck with the Conservation Commission, because it sounds like they have the most threatening conditions to deal with, or not threatening, I didn't mean it like that, but the ones that are one of the biggest concerns about the impact on everybody around there seems to be that flooding. So, all right, thank you everyone. The next item on the agenda, as we approach 10:17 p.m., looks like a zoning amendment article discussion and work session. I thought maybe best thing would be, Abby, if you could just update us on how, report back from our FinCom meeting, or Rob and I and Abby presented the initial articles to FinCom, but we're having our public hearing on February 23rd. And so at the February 23rd will be where we take public comment and get into a full discussion of that. But Abby, you want to kind of give a summary of how that, I mean, I'll say it went really well, and Rob's presentation about the medical uses was really effective, and I think FinCom members really appreciated the work that had gone into that, and how that it's how we approached it. But Abby, do you want to?
No, I mean, that's it. Yep, your public hearing is at your next meeting on February 23rd. So that's where you'll have a full presentation of all your articles at that meeting. So we've started, we've done the newspaper public hearing notification. Will be in the newspaper this week, and any mailings and notifications of that have gone out or are in the mail right now. So I have, a draft FAQs of frequently asked questions that we're finalizing. I know at the FinCom, they had one of the members has suggested a visual showing where in the zoning, showing those, kind of help them visualize the existing gaps and how this proposal was closing those gaps. So we started working on that. So we'll get ready for your next hearing on the 23rd. And on the 23rd, at the conclusion of that night, that's when you make your recommendation to the Finance and Warrant Commission for their hearing on March 8th.
All right, and I would just, if there's anyone watching that wants to submit comments that is not able to make it to that public hearing, we can always take comments by email. You can watch the FinCom presentation on the YouTube channel for Westwood Media Center, so you can see that. Submit things in advance of that meeting. If you submit emails in advance, then we can share that with all the board members here and include that in our discussion there. So anything else? Does anyone have anything else they want to add to that topic? All right. Let's see, other business. Yeah, so we technically right now, we do not have a secretary. Every board, you have a chair, a vice chair and a secretary, but Bill DeLay was the secretary. Like most of these positions don't have official requirements. Some towns, the secretary signs the minutes or something. We have a recording secretary, Jessica here, who takes the minutes. So if someone wanted to write up the annual report, that would be very helpful. That's what Steve Olenoff did that many times in the past. But I would.
He didn't do that as secretary, though.
That's true. So basically, we need to fill the position. Would someone be interested in being elected secretary?
Sure.
I nominate Mike McCusker.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a nomination and a second. And anybody else interested? No other nominations. All right. Roll call vote, so this is to appoint Mike McCusker to be the secretary. Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Then
And I vote yes as well. So congratulations, Mike, you are the secretary of the planning board.
On that note, Abby, are we going to change the letterhead to be reflective of the roster, as it were?
Yes, we will do that. Yeah.
And you print it out every time, right? I mean, it's not like there's a stack of paper somewhere that we have to, or business cards and all that. It's all just electronic, so no cost. Okay, the meeting minutes. We have meeting minutes from January 11th and from January 12th. Does anybody have any additions or changes to those minutes or had time to review them? Or
I read them both and thought they were accurate, had no changes.
I as well.
all right, does someone want to make a motion to approve?
I can only participate in the 12th.
Right.
Yeah, you can just abstain, and let's do them one at a time and have a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the January 11th, 2021 joint meeting with the select board.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
And I think Mr. McCusker will abstain. Yes. And I vote yes as well. So those minutes are adopted. The January 12th minutes.
I'll make a motion. We accept the January the 12th, 2021 draft minutes.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion from Mr. McCusker, seconded by Mr. Gotti. All those in favor was roll call vote. Mr. Paff?
Yes.
Mr. Gotti?
Yes.
Mr. McCusker?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So those meeting minutes are adopted. And let's see, we have just a reminder to read and email the town clerk that you received the conflict of interest summary law material, and to take the online training for the that's the conflict of interest stuff. And actually it's a pretty good and challenging training. Actually, they throw a lot of trick questions at you with exceptions. You think you have you answer it as the strict way, and then there's an exception. So it's good stuff. Anything else, Abby, that we need to go over?
No, that's it. Just, I think if you haven't already signed those special permit plans, I don't know, Mike, if you're able to try again. They should.
I did not see them there.
Oh.
I will go
No,
back.
you know what?
And find them.
I went in and they had to actually retrieve them, and I used the meeting room there to lay them out and sign them.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Yeah,
They
that's too
didn't
big.
even know what I was talking about when I first went there.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. They probably have a lot of stuff. It's not their most important thing to them, but so it's 3 sheets. They should be rolled up. You know, they're full set of.
Take care of it tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
All right, our next meeting is the February 23rd, right? Which is the public hearing for the town meeting articles, as well as the continuation of the Mazda for the 420 Providence and a few other things. And the Green Company's coming too, right?
And don't forget Earth Material Movement.
Yeah, and I wonder where they'll be moving.
Yeah, where's that gonna go now?
Where's it gonna go now?
The hot potato.
Most discussed dirt ever.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. It's seconded. Roll call, Mr. Paff,
Yes.
Mr. Gotti,
Yes.
Mr. McCusker.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.